off the plastic tab and we'll turn on the colors. Welcome to New Orleans. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome State of Louisiana Chief Design Officer Matthew Vance and Choice Hotels Director of Infrastructure Services, Stacy Night.
Well, good morning, New Orleans, and welcome to my home state. My name is Matt Vince. I'm the Chief Design Officer for the state of Louisiana, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to .Next 2018. State of Louisiana is currently re-architecting our cloud infrastructure, and Nutanix is the first domino to fall in our strategy to deliver better services to our citizens.
And I'd like to second that warm welcome. I'm Stacy Night, Director of Infrastructure Services for Choice Hotels International. Now, you may think you know Choice, but we don't own hotels. We're a technology company, and Nutanix is helping us innovate the way we operate to support our franchisees. This is my first visit to New Orleans and my first .Next.
Well, Stacy, you're in for a treat. New Orleans is known for its fabulous food and its marvelous music, but most importantly, the free spirit.
Well, I can't wait. And speaking of free, it's my pleasure to introduce the Nutanix Freedom video. Enjoy.
I lose everything so I can sing hallelujah, I'm free. I lose everything so I can sing hallelujah, I'm free. I lose everything so I can sing hallelujah, I'm free. I'm free, I'm free, I'm free, I'm free. Quitting on to me, hold on to me. It's never enough, never complete. Tell me to lose, expect me to lose. Push it away, trying to move. Desperate to run, desperate to leave. If I lose it all, at least I'll be free. Hallelujah, I'm free.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chief Marketing Officer Ben Gibson.
Welcome. Good morning. And welcome to .Next 2018. There's no better way to open up a .Next conference than by hearing from two of our great customers. And Matthew, thank you for welcoming us to this beautiful, your beautiful state and city. And Stacy, this is your first .Next, and I know she's not alone because guess what? It's my first .Next too, and I come properly attired. In the front row, you can see my Nutanix socks, and I think my Nutanix blue suit. And I know I'm not alone. I think a lot of the over 5,000 people in attendance here today are also first-timers at .Next. And if you are here for the first time, it's in the morning, let's get moving. I want you to stand up so we can officially welcome you into the fold. Everyone stand up, first time. All right, welcome. So you are all joining not just a conference here. This is truly a community. This is a community of the best and brightest in our industry, I will humbly say, that are coming together to share best ideas, to learn what's happening next. And in particular, it's about forwarding not only your projects and your priorities, but your careers. There's so much change happening in this industry, it's an opportunity to learn what's coming down the road and learn how you can best position yourself for this whole new world that's happening around cloud computing and modernizing data center environments. And this is not just a community, this is a movement. And it's a movement that started quite a while ago, but the first .NEXT conference was in the quiet little town of Miami, and there was about 800 of you in attendance or so. So who in this hall here were at that first .NEXT conference in Miami? Let me hear from you. Yeah. Well, to all of you grizzled veterans of the .NEXT experience, welcome back. You have started a movement that has grown, and then this year, across many different .NEXT conferences all over the world, over 20,000 of your community members have come together. And we like to do it in a distributed architecture fashion, just like here at Nutanix. And so we've spread this movement all over the world with .NEXT conferences. And this is surging. We're also seeing, just today, the current count, 61,000 certifications and climbing. Our next community, close to 70,000 active members of our online community, because .NEXT is about this big moment, and it's about every other day and every other week of the year, how we come together and explore. And my favorite stat of all, here today in this hall, amongst the record 5,500 registrations to .NEXT 2018, representing 71 countries in Hull. So it's a global movement. Everyone welcome. And you know, when I got in Sunday night, I was looking at the tweets, and people, and the excitement was starting to build. And I started to see people like Adil coming from Casablanca. Adil, wherever you are, welcome, buddy. That's a long trip. Thank you so much for coming and being here with us today. I saw other folks coming from Geneva, from Denmark, from Japan, all over the world coming together for this moment. And we are accomplishing phenomenal things together. Because of your trust in us, and because of some early risks, candidly, that we have all taken together, we've created a movement in the market around modernizing data center environments, radically simplifying how we operate and the services we deliver to our businesses every day. And this is a movement that we don't just know about this, but the industry is really taking notice. I love this chart. This is Gartner's inaugural hyperconvergence infrastructure Magic Quadrant chart. And I think if you see where Nutanix is positioned on there, I think you can agree that's a rout. That's a home run. That's a mic drop, so to speak. What do you guys think? But here's the thing. It says Nutanix up there. We can honestly say this is a win for this hall here. Because again, without your trust in us and what we've accomplished together and your partnership with us, we're not there. But we are there, and it is thanks to everyone in this hall. Together, we have created, expanded, and truly made this market. Congratulations. And you know what? I think we're just getting started. The same innovation, the same catalyst that we drove into the market to converge storage, network, compute, the next horizon is around multi-cloud. The next horizon is around, whether by accident or on purpose, the strong move with different workloads moving into public cloud, some into private cloud, moving back and forth, the promise of application mobility, the right workload on the right cloud platform with the right economics. And economics is key here. If any of you have a teenager out there and they have a hold of your credit card and they're doing something online or the like, you get some surprises at the end of the month. And that surprise comes in the form of spiraling public cloud costs. And this isn't to say we're not going to see a lot of workloads born and running in public cloud, but the opportunity is for us to take a path that regains control over infrastructure, regain control over workloads and where they're run. And the way I look at it, for everyone in this hall, it's a journey that we're on. It starts with modernizing those data center environments. continues with embracing the full cloud stack and the compelling opportunity to deliver that consumer experience to rapidly offer up enterprise compute services to your internal clients, lines of businesses, and then out into the market. It's then about how you standardize across an enterprise cloud environment, that you're not just the infrastructure, but the management, the automation, the control, and running any tier 1 application. And I hear this every day, and I've heard this a lot already this week, about customers who are all in with this approach and running those tier 1 applications on Nutanix. And then it's the promise of not only hyperconverging infrastructure, but hyperconverging multiple clouds. And if we do that, this journey, the way we see it, what we are doing is building your enterprise cloud. And your enterprise cloud is about the private cloud. It's about expanding and managing and taking back control of how you determine what workload to run where, and to make sure there's strong governance and control, and you're radically simplifying what could be an awfully complicated scenario if you don't reclaim and put your arms around that opportunity. Now, how do we do this different than anyone else? And this is going to be a big theme that you're going to see from my good friend Sunil and his good friends on the product team. What are we doing together? We're taking all of that legacy complexity, that friction, that inability to be able to move fast because you're chained to old legacy environments. I'm talking to folks that have applications that are 40 years old, and they are concerned to touch them because they're not sure if they can react, if their infrastructure can meet the demands of a new modernized workload. We're making all that complexity invisible. And if all of that is invisible, it allows you to focus on what's next. And that indeed is the spirit of this conference. So that the what is enterprise cloud, and the how we do it differently is by making infrastructure invisible, data centers, clouds. Then why are we all here today? What is the binding principle that spiritually, that emotionally brings us all together? And we think it's a very simple, powerful word. And that word is freedom. And when we think about freedom, we think about, as we work together, the freedom to build the data center that you've always wanted to build. It's about freedom to run the applications where you choose, based on the information and the context that wasn't available before. It's about the freedom of choice to choose the right cloud platform for the right application. And again, to avoid a lot of these spiraling costs and unanticipated surprises, whether it be around security, whether it be around economics, or governance that come to the forefront. It's about the freedom to invent. It's why we got into this industry in the first place. We want to create, we want to build things, not keep the lights on, not be chained to mundane tasks day by day. And it's about the freedom to play. And I hear this time and time again. My favorite tweet from a Nutanix customer to this day is just updated a lot of nodes at 38,000 feet on United Wi-Fi on my way to spend vacation with my family. Freedom to play. This, to me, is emotionally what brings us all together. And what you saw with the Freedom video earlier and what you see here is this new story, because we want to go out and spread the word. And not only talk about the enterprise cloud, not only talk about how we do it better, but talk about why it's so compelling to be a part of this hall here today. Now, just one note of housekeeping for everyone out there, in case I don't want everyone to take a wrong turn as they come to this beautiful convention center here today. A lot of freedom going on in this convention center. As luck may have it, there's another conference going on a little bit down that way based on another high-growth, disruptive industry. Now, MJ BizCon Next, and by coincidence, it's also called Next. And I have to admire the creativity. I have to admire the fact that we do share, hey, high-growth business model here. And in case you're not quite sure what this conference is about, I'm the head of marketing here. I have to show the tagline. of this. And I read the tagline from License to Launch and Beyond, the future of the... Now, if I can replace that blank with our industry, I don't know, to me it sounds like a new cool Sunil product launch, maybe launching a new subscription service or the like. Stay tuned, you never know. I think they're going to have a good time over there. I know we're going to have a wonderful week here, both to learn as well as have a lot of fun, particularly in our customer appreciation event tonight. I want to spend a few very important moments on .Heart. .Heart is Nutanix's initiative to promote diversity in the technology arena. In particular, we have a focus on advancing the careers of women and young girls that we want to encourage to move into STEM and high-tech careers. You have the opportunity to engage this week with this important initiative. Please roll the video and let's learn more about how you can do so. So all of you have received these .Heart tokens. You have the freedom to go and choose which of the 4 very deserving charities can receive donations to really advance our cause. So I thank you for your engagement there. And this community is behind .Heart, and it's a very important one, so thank you for that. .Next is not the community, the moment it is, without our wonderful partners. These are our amazing sponsors. Yes, it's about sponsorship. It's also about how we integrate together, how we innovate together, and we are about an open community. And so I want to thank all of these names up here for your wonderful sponsorship of this event. I encourage everyone here in this room to spend time, get acquainted, get reacquainted, learn how we can make wonderful music happen together. Wonderful music here in New Orleans happen together. .Next isn't .Next with a few cool surprises. Surprise number 1, we have a contest. This is a still shot from the Freedom video you saw right before I came on. We have strategically placed a lucky 7 Nutanix Easter eggs in this video. And if you go to nutanix.com/freedom, watch the video. You may have to use the little scrubbing feature to slow down because some of these happen quickly. You're going to find some fun, clever Easter eggs. List all 7, tweet that out, or as many as you can, tweet that out with hashtag NextConf, C-O-N-F, and we'll have a random drawing for an all expenses paid free trip to .Next 2019. And just to make sure everyone understands Easter egg concept, there's an 8th one here that's actually someone that's quite famous in our circles. If you see on the still shot, there's someone in the back there with a red jacket on. That's not just anyone. We're targeting in here. That is our very own Julie O'Brien, our Senior Vice President of Corporate Marketing. And you're going to hear from Julie later on here at .Next. But Julie and her team are the engine and the creativity behind not only our new Freedom campaign, but more importantly, everything that you experience here this week. Julie and her team are amazing, and we can't wait for you to experience what they've pulled together for you. Another surprise. If you go and visit our Freedom booths and share your stories, so they're like video booths, you share your success stories, your partnerships, your journey that I talked about, you will be entered to win a beautiful Nutanix brand compliant, look at those beautiful colors, bicycle. And it's not just any bicycle, it's a beautiful bicycle made by our beautiful customer, Trek. I actually have a Trek bike. I love cycling. Unfortunately, I'm not eligible, but all of you are. So please share your stories in the Freedom Nutanix booths and put yourself in the running or in the cycling to get this prize. One more thing I wanted to share here. Yesterday, we had a great time. We had our inaugural Nutanix hackathon. This hackathon brought together folks that were in DevOps practices, many of you there in this room. We sold out. We thought maybe we'd get 4 or 5 teams. We had to shut down at 14 teams that were paired together with a Nutanix mentor, and you coded. You used our RESTful APIs. You built new apps that integrated in with Prism and Calm. And it was wonderful to see this. Everyone I talked to had a great time on this. We had 3 winners. In 3rd place, we had Team Copper, or Team Bronze, but Team Copper, silver, not that special. They're very humble, kind of like our, one of our key mission statements. And the grand prize winner was, we did it all for the cookies. And you saw them coming in on our Mardi Gras float here. We did it all for cookies. They did this very creative job. They leveraged an Apple Watch. They were lighting up VMs at a moment's notice, utilizing a lot of their coding skills. Congratulations to all 3. First, second, and third all received $2,500. And then each of them then were able to choose a charity to deliver another $2,500, including Ronald McDonald House for the winner. We did it all for the McDonaldland cookies, I suppose, to move forward. So look for us to do more of these kind of events, because we want to bring together infrastructure and application development, and this is a great, I think, start for us in this community to be able to do so. With that, who's ready to hear from Dheeraj? You ready to hear from Dheeraj? I'm ready to hear from Dheeraj, and not just because I work for him. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome on the stage our CEO, co-founder, and chairman, Dheeraj Pandey.
Thank you, Ben, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's just such an elation when I'm thinking about the Mardi Gras crowd that came here. The partners, the customers, the NTCs. I mean, there were some great NTCs up there, one I could relate to, because they're on Slack as well. How many of you are in Slack, Nutanix internal Slack channel? Probably 5%. Would love to actually see this community grow from here, because this is not the only event where we'd love to meet you. We'd love to actually do this in a real-time, bite-sized communication on our own internal Slack channel itself. Now, today, we're going to talk about a lot of things, but a lot of hard things, a lot of things that take time to build and have evolved as the industry itself has evolved. And one of the hard things that I want to talk about is multi-cloud. Multi-cloud is a really hard problem because it's full of paradoxes. It's really about doing things that you believe are opposites of each other. It's about frictionless, but it's also about governance. It's about being simple, and it's also about being secure at the same time. It's about delight, it's about reducing waste. It's about owning and renting, and finally, it's also about core and edge. How do you really make this big at a core data center, whether it's public or private, but how do you really shrink it down to 1 or 2 nodes at the edge, because that's where your machines are, that's where your people are. So this is a really hard problem, and as you'll hear from Sunil and the gang there, you'll realize how we've actually evolved our solutions to really cater to some of these. So one of the approaches that we have used to really solve some of these hard problems is to have machines do more. And I said a lot of things in those 4 words, have machines do more, because if you double-click on that sentence, it really means we're letting design be at the core of this. How do you really design data centers? How do you really design products for the data center that hush all the escalations, the details, the complexities, use machine learning and AI, and figure out anomaly detection and correlations and pattern matching? There's a ton of things that you need to do to really have machines do more. But along the way, the important lesson is to make machines invisible. Because when machines become invisible, it actually makes something else visible. It makes you visible. It makes governance visible. It makes applications visible, and it makes services visible. A lot of things makes teams visible, careers visible. So while we're really talking about invisibility of machines, we're we're talking about visibility of people. And that's how we really brought all of you together in this conference as well, because it makes all of us shine, including our products and your careers and your teams as well. And I try to define the word customer success. It's one of the favorite words that I'm actually using. We've just hired a great leader in customer success recently who's really going to focus on this relatively hard problem, yet another hard problem of customer success. We think that true customer success is possible when we have machines tend towards invisibility, but along the way, when we do that, we make humans tend towards freedom. So that's the real connection, the yin-yang of machines and humans that Nutanix is really all about. And that's why design is at the core of this company. And when I say design, I mean reducing friction. And it's really about reducing friction. In everything you do, the most mundane of things, which could be about migrating applications, spinning up VMs, self-service portals, automatic upgrades and automatic scale-out, and all the things we do is about reducing friction, which really makes machines become invisible and humans gain freedom. Now, one of the other convictions we have is how all of us are really tied at the hip. Our success is tied to your success. If we make you successful, and when I say you, I really mean Main Street. Main Street being customers and partners and employees. If you make all of you successful, then we automatically become successful. And very coincidentally, Main Street and Wall Street are also tied in that very same relation as well. And if we do a great job with Main Street, I think the Wall Street customer, i.e. the investor, will take care of itself. You'd have taken care of their success if we took care of Main Street success itself. And that's the narrative that our CFO, Dustin Williams, actually went and painted to our Wall Street investors 2 months ago at our Investor Day conference. We talked about a $3 billion number. We said, look, as a company, as a software company, we can go and achieve $3 billion in billings 3 years from now. And it was a telling moment for the company. It was really about talking about where we could be 3 years from now, but it was not based on a hunch. It was based on what we thought was customer success. Now, realize that $3 billion in pure software, there's only 15 companies around the world, 10 to 15 companies in the world that actually have that kind of a software billings number itself. But at the core of this confidence was customer success, was the fact that we were doing a really good job of not over-promising and under-delivering, but under-promising, starting with small systems and growing the trust of the customers over time. And this is one of the statistics we actually talk about is repeat business. The first dollar that a Global 2000 customer spends in Nutanix, we go and increase that trust 15 times by year 6, and we hope to actually get 17 and a half and 19 times more trust, in the years 7 and 8. And it's very similar numbers for non-Global 2000 as well. Again, we go and really hustle for customer success, start small, have you not worry about paying millions of dollars upfront. Start with systems that pay as they grow. You pay as you grow, and that's the way we gain trust. We have the same non-Global 2000 pay $6.50 for the first dollar they've actually spent on us. And with this, I think the most telling moment was when Dustin concluded, and this is key to this audience here as well, is how the current cohorts, which is this audience here and many of them who are not here, will actually carry the weight of the $3 billion, more than 50% of it, if we did a great job of customer success. If we were humble and honest and we really figured out what it meant to take care of you, and if we really understood what starting small was and having to gain the trust with you over time, we think that more than 50% of that billings will actually come from this audience here, without even looking at new logos outside. So that's the crust of customer success for us, and it takes care of pretty much every customer, not just the Main Street customer. It takes care of Wall Street customer. It takes care of employees. It takes care of partners as well. Now, before I talk about technology and products, I want to take a step back because many of you are new in this audience, and I think that it behooves us to really talk about the history of this company. Like, we've done a lot of things that started out as science projects, In fact, I see some tweets out there when people actually laugh at Nutanix Cloud. This is where we were in 2012. So if you take a step back and think about where the company was almost 7, 8 years ago, we were up against giants. There was a $30 billion industry around network-attached storage and storage area networks and blade servers and hypervisors and systems management software and so on. So what did we start out with? A very simple premise that we will collapse the architecture of the data center because 3-tier is wasteful and 3-tier is not delightful. It's a very simple hunch. We said we'll take rack-mount servers, we put a layer of software on top of it, and that layer of software back then only did storage, didn't do networks and security. And it ran on top of a well-known hypervisor from VMware. And we said there's one non-negotiable thing, the fact that the design must change. The control plane for this data center cannot be the old control plane. It has to be rethought through, and that's why Prism came about. Now, we went and hustled hard to add more things to it. We said we need to make this diverse because it can't just be for one application. We need to make it CPU heavy and memory heavy and storage heavy and flash heavy and so on. And we built a highly configurable HCI. Not all of them are actually configurable, as you know of today. And this was not just innovation in technology, it was innovation in business and sizing, capacity planning, quote-to-cash business processes, a lot of stuff that we had to do to make this highly configurable so you can really scale capacity and performance independent of each other. Then, in 2014, we did something that was very counterintuitive, but we've done this on and on and on again. People said, why are you disrupting yourself? You've been doing a good job of shipping appliances, but we also had the conviction that HCI was not about hardware. It was about a form factor, but it was really about an operating system. And we started to compete with ourselves when we said, you know what? We'll do arm's length distribution. We'll do arm's length delivery of products when we give our software to a Dell partner, to Dell as a partner, as an OEM partner. But at the same time, it was actually seen with a lot of skepticism. Like, these guys are really wondering how to really make themselves vanish because they're competing with themselves. But we also knew that if we didn't compete with ourselves, someone else will. Now, one of the most controversial decisions was really going and doing yet another hypervisor. In the year 2015, it was really preposterous to build yet another hypervisor. It was a very mature market. This was coming probably 15 years too late to the market, or at least 10 years too late to the market. And most people said it shouldn't be done because hypervisor is a commodity. And that's the word we latched onto, that this commodity should not have to be paid for. It shouldn't have a team of people managing it. It should actually be part of your overall stack, but it should be invisible. Just like storage needs to be invisible, virtualization needs to be invisible. But it was a bold step, and I think, at least when we look at our current numbers, 1/3 of our customers are actually using AHV. At least every quarter that we look at it, our new deployments, at least 35% of it is actually being used on AHV itself. And again, a very preposterous thing to have said 5 years ago, 4 years ago, to where we've actually come. Thank you so much for all of you who've believed in the fact that virtualization software must be invisible, and therefore we should actually try out something that is called AHV today. Now, we went and added Lenovo to our OEM mix. We started to become even more of a software company in the year 2016. Went and added an HP and Cisco. Some of our very large deals that we talk about in the earnings call are HP deals and Cisco deals. And there's some very large customers who have procured ELAs from us, enterprise license agreements from us, where they want to mix and match hardware, and want to mix Dell hardware with HP hardware, but have common standard Nutanix entitlements. And finally, I think this was another one of those moments where we said, why should HCI be only limited to x86? This operating system deserves to run on a non-x86 architecture as well. And that gave birth to this idea of HCI and power systems from IBM. And we've done a great job of really innovating with them in the last 3-4 quarters. Some amazing innovation that has come out where you can now run AIX 7.x on Nutanix. And For the first time in the history of data center, you can actually have a single software, not just a data plane, but a control plane, where you can manage an IBM farm, a power farm, an open power farm, and an x86 farm from the same control plane, and have the IBM farm feed storage to an Intel compute farm and vice versa. So some really good things that we've actually done. Now, along the way, something else was going on. While we were really busy building the private cloud, we knew that there was a new consumption model on computing itself, where people were renting computing using credit cards. This is the era of the millennials. They were like, really want to bypass people, because at the end of the day, why can't computing be consumed like the way e-commerce is? And that DevOps movement made us realize that we need to add to our stack. That stack will now have other computing clouds. There's AWS and Azure and GCP now. So similar to the way we did Prism, Prism was really about going and making hypervisors invisible. We went ahead and said we'll add Calm to our portfolio, because Calm is now going to be what Prism was to us back when we were really dealing with multi-hypervisor world. Now it's going to be a multi-cloud world. And it's one of those things we had a gut around, and we've really come to expect a lot of feedback and real innovation. I mean, yesterday when we had the hackathon, the epicenter of the discussion was Calm. How do you automate on multiple clouds without having to write a single line of code? So we've come a long way since the acquisition of Calm 2 years ago. I think it's going to be a great, a strong pillar in our overall product portfolio itself. Now, the word multi-cloud is going to be used and overused. In fact, it's going to be blurring its lines with the idea of hyperconvergence of clouds. What does it mean? We just hope that hyperconvergence, the way it's called today, will morph to become hyperconverged clouds, not just hyperconverged boxes, which is a software-defined infrastructure definition itself. But let's focus on the why of multi-cloud. Like, why do we think it can't all go into a public cloud itself? And the one big reason is just laws of the land. There's data sovereignty and computing sovereignty, regulations and compliance, because of which you need to be in where the government, where the regulations, where the compliance rules want you to be. And by the way, that's just one reason why the cloud will have to disperse itself. It can't just be 10, 20 large data centers around the world itself, because we have 200+ countries, and half of computing actually gets done outside the US itself. So it's a really important, very relevant point about the why of multi-cloud. The second one is just simple laws of physics. If there are machines at the edge and they're producing so much data, you can't bring all the data to the compute. You have to take the compute, which is stateless. It's an app. You have to take the app to where the data is, because the network is the enemy. The network has always been the enemy. And when you thought we've made fatter networks, we've just produced more data as well. So this just goes without saying that you have to take something that's stateless, that's without gravity, that's lightweight, which is compute of the application, and push it close to where the data itself is. And the third one, which is related, is just latency reasons. And it's not just about machine latency and electrons transferring with the speed of light, and you can't fight the speed of light. It's also about human latency. It's also about multiple teams saying, we need to federate and delegate, and we need to push things down to where the teams are, as opposed to having to expect everybody to come to a very large computing power itself. So all the whys, the way they are, there will be at least 3 different ways of looking at multi-cloud itself. There's a centralized core cloud. We all go and relate to this, because we've seen large data centers and so on. And that's the back office workhorse. It will crunch numbers, it'll do processing, it'll do a ton of things that will go and produce results for how we run our businesses. But there's also the dispersal of the cloud. It's the robo cloud, and this is the front office server. It's really serving. It's a cloud that's going to serve people. It's going to be closer to people, and that's what a robo cloud is. We have a ton of customers out here who actually use Nutanix at the robo environments themselves. There's 1 node, 2 node, 3 node, 5 node servers, and it just collapses the entire server closet room in these robos into something really, really small and minuscule. And finally, there's going to be another dispersed edge cloud, because that's where the machines are, that's where the data is. And then there's going to be an IoT machine fog because we need to miniaturize computing to something even smaller, maybe something that can really land on a palm, and a mini server, which is a PC-like server, where you need to run everything that's enterprise grade. You should be able to go and upgrade them and monitor them and analyze them and do enough computing out there, maybe event-based processing that can actually happen. In fact, there's some great innovation that we have done at the edge with IoTs that I'd love for all of you to actually attend some sessions around as well. So with that being said, we have a hole in the stack. And that hole is probably one of the hardest problems that we've been trying to solve for the last 2 years. And Sunil will talk a lot about that. It's this idea of hybrid. The hybrid of multi-cloud is one of the hardest problems. Why? Because we're talking about really blurring the lines between owning and renting, where you have a single-tenant environment, which is your data center, and a multi-tenant environment, which is the service provider's data center, and the two must look like the same. And the two must look like the same is that hard a problem, not just for burst out capacity, not just for security, not just for identity, but also for networks. Like, how do you blur the lines between networks? How do you blur the lines for storage? How do you really blur the lines for a single pane of glass where you can think of availability zones that look highly symmetric, even though they're not, because one of them is owned by you and it's single tenant, the other one is not owned by you, that's multi-tenant itself. So there's some really hard problems in hybrid that you'll hear Sunil talk about, and the team, and some great strides that we've actually made in the last 12 months of really working on Xi itself. And that completes the picture now in terms of how we believe the state of computing will be going forward. So what are the must-haves of a multi-cloud operating system? We talked about marketplace, which is catalogs and automation. There's a ton of orchestration that needs to be done for multi-cloud to come together, because now you have a self-service portal which is providing an e-commerce view. It's really about getting to do a lot of requests and workflows without having people come in the way, without even having tickets. There's no need for tickets if you can really start to think like a self-service portal, like as if you're just transacting e-commerce with machines and portals themselves. Obviously, the next one is network and security. You need to have really, you need to blur the lines between on-prem and off-prem itself, and these two play a huge role. And there's going to be a ton of details that you'll see Sunil talk about. But finally, the thing that I want to focus on the rest of the talk itself here is about governance and compliance. This is a hard problem, and it's a hard problem because things have evolved. So I want to take a step back, last 30 years of computing. How have consumption models changed? So think about it. 30 years ago, we were making decisions for 10 plus years. Mainframe, 10 years worth, at least 10 years worth, probably even 20 plus years worth of decisions. These were decisions that were extremely waterfallish. You make tens of millions of dollars worth of investment for a device that you'd buy for at least 10 to 20 years. Now, as we move to client-server, that thing actually shrunk. Now you're talking about 5 years worth of decisions, and these things were smaller. So there's a little bit more velocity in our decisions. We were not making as waterfallish a decision as we used to with mainframes, but still 5 years. And talk about virtualized 3-tier, maybe 3 to 5 year decisions. There's still relatively big decisions that we were making with compute and storage and SAN fabrics and virtualization software and systems management software and so on. And here comes Nutanix, and we said, no, we need to make it smaller. It has to become smaller because we need to make more agile decisions. We need to add machines every week, every month, as opposed to adding machines every 3 to 5 years. And we need to be able to upgrade them in point in time. We can do the upgrades every month if you had to, every week if you had to, and so on. So really about more agility. And yet, we were not complete because there's another revolution going on off-prem in the public cloud where people are going and doing reserved instances. But more than that, they were doing on-demand stuff, which now the decision was days to weeks. Some of these things that the unit of compute was being rented for days to weeks, not years. And if you needed something more, you'd shift a little to the left and use reserved instances. And then spot pricing, you could do spot pricing for hours, and finally Lambda functions. Now you could do functions as a service, where things could actually be running only for minutes, not even hours. So as you can see, there's a wide spectrum where when you move to the right, you get more elasticity, and when you move to the left, you're talking about predictable decision making, and in fact, goes from minutes on one side to tens of years in the other itself. And we hope to actually go and blur the lines between where NTNX is today, where you see Nutanix right now, to where we really want to be with reserved instances and on-demand. And that's the real ask of Nutanix. How do you take care of this discontinuity? Because when you are owning things, you actually end up here. When you're renting things, you end up here. What does it mean to really blur the lines between the two? Because people do want to make decisions that are better than reserved instances in the public cloud. We'll talk about why reserved instances, which looks like a proxy for Nutanix, is still very, very wasteful. Even though you might think it's delightful, it's very, very wasteful. So what does it mean for on-prem and off-prem? There's, you talk about cost governance, there's security compliance, there's high-velocity decisions we're actually making, where sometimes you could be right on cost but wrong on security, but sometimes you could be right in security but wrong on cost. We need to really figure out how machines make some of these decisions for us, how software helps us decide, do we have the right balance between cost governance and security compliance itself? And to get it right, we have introduced our first SaaS service called Beam. And to talk more about Beam, I want to introduce Vijay Rayapati, who's the general manager of Beam Engineering, to come on stage and talk about Beam itself. Thank you, Vijay. Appreciate it. So you've been here a couple of months now?
Yes.
At the same time, you spent the last 7, 8 years really hand-holding AWS. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time trying to understand over the last 5 years at Minjar, how customers are really consuming in this new world, right, for their workloads. So essentially, what we tried to do is understand the consumption models, workload patterns, and also build algorithms and apply intelligence to say, how can we lower this cost and improve compliance of their workloads? And now with Nutanix, what we are trying to do is how can we converge this consumption, right? Because what happens here is most customers start with on-demand kind of a consumption, thinking it's really easy, but the total cost of ownership is so high. As the workload elasticity increases, people go towards spot or scaling, but then you need a lot more automation. That's something like Calm can help them with. But predictability of the workload increases, then you need to move towards reserved instances, right, to lower cost. But
and those are some of the things that you go and advise with some of the software that you folks have actually written.
But there is a lot of waste even in the reserved instances, because what happens is while customers make these commitments for a year or 3 years, what we see across, like we track $1 billion in public cloud consumption, as a Beam, and customers use 20, 25% of utilization of their commitments, right? So how can you really take the data of consumption, apply intelligence to essentially reduce their overall cost of ownership?
You said something that's very telling. You said that reserved instances, even though they're supposed to save, are still only 20, 25% utilized.
Yes, because the workloads are very dynamic. And the next thing is you can't do hot add CPU or a hot add memory because you're buying them for peak capacity, right? There is no convergence of scaling that apart from scaling as another node.
So you actually sized it for peak, but then using 20, 30%, you're still paying for the peak.
That's right.
That can actually add up.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we are trying to say. How can we deliver visibility across clouds? How can we deliver optimization across clouds and consumption models and bring the control while retaining that agility and elasticity?
That's great. So you want to show us something?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is Beam, as just Dheeraj outlined, our first SaaS service, and this is my first .next, and glad to be here. So what you see here is a global consumption, for a business across different clouds, whether that's in a public cloud like Amazon or Azure or Nutanix. We kind of bring the consumption together for the month, for the recent months, across your accounts and services, and apply intelligence to say, what is your spend efficiency, across these clouds, right? Essentially, there is a lot of intelligence that goes in to detect your workloads and consumption model to say if you're spending $100, how efficiently are you spending? How can you increase that, right?
So you have a centralized view where you're looking at multiple clouds and you talk about, maybe you can take an example of an account and start looking at it.
Let's go into a cloud provider like, for this business, let's go and take a look at, what's happening inside an Amazon cloud. Here, we get into the deeper details of, what's happening with the consumption of a specific services, as well as, the utilization of both on-demand and RI. What can you do to lower your costs and detect your spend efficiency of $1 to see, are there resources that are provisioned by teams for applications that are not being used? Or are there resources that we should go and right size because we have all this monitoring data, configuration data that we crunch through to basically detect this.
So what is billions of events that you look at every day? You're already looking at $1 billion worth of AWS spend.
Right.
So billions of events, billing, metering events every day to really figure out how to optimize for them.
So what we have here is a very popular international government organization.
Wow, so it looks like Russians are everywhere or the cloud is everywhere, actually.
Yeah, it's quite popular. So when you bring your master account into Beam, we kind of detect all the linked accounts, under that. Then you can go and take a look at, not just at an organization level, within at an account level.
So these are child objects, like, you can think of them as ephemeral accounts that you create because you don't want to be on the record when you're doing spends on Facebook, for example.
Right, let's go and take a look at what's happening inside a Facebook ad spend account, right? So we have, consumption of various services. Let's go deeper into compute consumption, and you kind of see a trend line. You can do a lot of pivoting. As you see, looks like one campaign has ended. They started another campaign.
Looks like they're not stopping yet, man. There's a lot of money being made on Facebook right now.
So not only just get visibility at a compute as a service inside a cloud provider, you can go deeper inside compute and say, what is that service that I'm really consuming inside compute along with the CPUs and stuff, right? What is my data transfer? What is my network? What is my load balancers, right? So you essentially get a very deeper visibility, as a service, right? Because we have 3 goals for Beam. How can we deliver visibility across clouds? How can we deliver visibility across services? And how can we deliver then optimization, right? Let me quickly
I think one thing that I just want to point out is how this SaaS application was an extremely teachable moment for me to learn about the different resources that people could use about the public cloud. So all of you who actually have not gone deep enough into the idea of public cloud, this could be a great app for you to learn about things, the resources, the things that you could do to save and security and things of that nature. So.
Yeah. So, and we really believe in, creating the single pane view, to manage your optimization of a public cloud. As Ben spoke about, as a business, you need to have freedom to use any cloud, and that's what Beam delivers, right? How can you make the right decision for a right workload to, use any of the cloud of your choice?
How about databases? You talked about compute as well, but
yes, let's go and take a look at, database consumption, right? What you see here is they're using, inside Facebook ad spend, they're using all databases except Oracle.
Wow. Looks like Oracle sales folks have been active in Russia as well.
So what we are seeing here is a global view of how can you, what is your spend efficiency, and which is kind of a scorecard for your business, for the dollars that you're spending. And the great thing is Beam kind of brings together, through its intelligence and algorithms to detect, how can you right-size resources and how can you, eliminate things that you're not using.
Yeah.
And we deliver a one-click fix, right? Let's go and take a look at resources that are maybe provisioned for storage and not being used. We deliver the seamless same one-click philosophy that Nutanix has to eliminate it, right?
So one click, you can actually just pick some of these wasteful things that might be looking delightful because using public cloud, using credit cards, you can go in and just say click, fix, and it takes care of things.
Yeah, and not only remove the resources that are unused, but you can go and right-size resources across your compute, databases, load balancers, even PaaS services, right? And this is where the power of it kind of comes for a business, whether you're using on-prem and off-prem. How can you really converge that consumption across both?
So do you have something for Nutanix too, or?
Yes, so we have basically working on Nutanix. This is something that we are going to deliver later this year. As you can see here, we are bringing together the consumption for the Nutanix, the services that you are using, the licensing and capacity that is available, and how can you also go and optimize within Nutanix environments, right, before you for the next workload. Now let me quickly show you what we have on the compliance side. This is an extremely powerful thing that we've been working on for many years. What we deliver here, just like in cost governance, a global view of your compliance across cloud providers, right? And the most powerful thing is you can go into a cloud provider, get the next level of visibility across cloud regions, right, for hundreds of policies, not just policies, but those policies across different regulatory compliances like HIPAA, PCI, CIS. And that's very powerful because...
So you're saying that a lot of what you folks have done is codified these compliance checks in software to make sure that people can sleep better at night, knowing that it's PCI and HIPAA and all that compliance actually comes together.
And you can build this not just by cloud accounts, you can build them across cloud accounts, which is what we call security centers. And now essentially you can go and take a deeper look at the things. We do a whole full body scan for your cloud infrastructure, whether it's AWS or Amazon or Azure. And you can go and now again, click to fix things, that are being probably provisioned, that are violating, the security compliance rules that shouldn't be there. Again, we have the same one-click philosophy to say, how can you really, remove things.
So again, similar to Save, you're saying you can go and fix some of these security issues by just doing one click.
Absolutely. So the idea is how can we give people the freedom to get visibility and use the right cloud and take the decisions instantly through one click, right? That's what Beam delivers, today. And, we are really excited. And it's available at beam.nutanix.com. And
our first SaaS service, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for doing this, Vijay. It looks like there's going to be a talk here at 10:30. You'll talk more about the midterm elections there, probably?
Yes, so you can go and write your own security compliances as well, within Beam. And a lot of powerful things you can do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vijay. I really appreciate it. So, as you see, there's a lot of work that we're doing to really make multi-cloud, which is a hard problem. Think about working the whole body of it. What about cost governance? What about security compliance? Obviously, what about hybrid networks and security and storage and compute, many of the things that you've actually heard from us, but we're taking it to a level where the business users can now understand the implications. The CFO's office can understand the implications of waste and delight. So what does customer success mean to us? Again, my favorite word in a long, long time is really go and figure out how do you make you, the customer, become operationally efficient. There's a lot of stuff that we deliver through software that's completely uncovered. It's so latent, you don't even know you have it, but you've paid for it. So you've got to figure out what does it mean for you to really become operationally efficient, organizationally proficient. It's really important for training, education, stuff that your people might think it's so awkward to do in Nutanix, but it could have been way simpler if we just told you a place where you could go and read about it. So, of course, I could just use one click here as opposed to doing things the old way. But most importantly, to make it financially accountable. So at the end, there's, again, one of the things that I think about all the time when we're building this company, because obviously there's a lot of stuff that we want to do to, create offense, things above the line and top line and everything else. There's also a bottom line. Delight and waste are two sides of the same coin. When we're talking about developers who seek delight with public cloud, at the same time, you're looking at IT folks who are trying to figure out governance. They're like, look, the CFO's office, the CIO's office, they're trying to figure out how to curb waste. These two things have to go hand in hand in this era of multi-cloud where we're talking about frictionless consumption, but also governance that looks invisible. So I think at the end of the day, this company will do a lot of stuff around one-click delight, but also go and figure out how do you reduce waste, because there's so much waste, including folks who actually own Nutanix. There's so much software entitlements, there's so much waste in the public cloud itself, that if we don't go and put our arms around, it will not lead to customer success. So to talk more about this, the idea of delight and the idea of waste, I'd like to bring on board a person who I think many of you actually have talked about it, has delightful hair, but probably wasted jokes, but I think has wasted hair and delightful jokes. So ladies and gentlemen, you make the call, you the jury, Sunil RMJ Potti.
So that was the first time I came out from the bottom of a screen on a stage. I actually now know what it feels to be like a gopher. And who's that laughing loudly at the back? OK, do we have the, let's see. OK, great. We are about 15 minutes late, so that means we are running right on time. That's normally how we roll at this conference. And we have about 3 customers and 4 demos. And it's been about, I think there's about 3 plus 6, about 9 folks coming on stage. So we'll have our own version of the parade as well on the main stage for the next 70 minutes. So let's just jump right into it. I think we've been pretty consistent in terms of our long-term plans since we started the company. And it's become a lot more clearer over the last few years about our plans to essentially make computing invisible, as Dheeraj mentioned. We're doing this across multiple acts. We started with HCI. We call it making infrastructure invisible. We extended that to making data centers invisible. And then now we're in this mode of essentially extending it to converging clouds so that you can actually converge your consumption models. And so today's conference, and essentially the theme that you're going to be seeing throughout the breakout sessions, is about our journey towards invisible clouds. But make sure that you internalize the fact that we are investing heavily in each of the 3 phases. It's just not about the hybrid cloud with Nutanix. It's about actually finishing the job, about making infrastructure invisible, expanding that to kind of go after the full data center, and then, of course, embark on some real meaningful things around invisible clouds, OK? And to start the session, I think the part that I wanted to make sure that we are all on the same page, because most of us in the room are still in probably this phase of the journey, which is about invisible infrastructure, right? And they're the 3 key products, and especially 2 of them that most of you guys know are Acropolis and Prism. And they're sort of like the bedrock of our company, right? Especially Acropolis, which is about the web scale architecture, Prism about consumer-grade design. And with Acropolis now being really mature, it's in the 7th year of innovation. We still have more than half of our company, in terms of R&D spend, still on Acropolis and Prism, right? So our core product is still sort of where we think we have a significant differentiation on, and we're not going to let our foot off the pedal there. And every time somebody comes to me and says, look, there's a new HCI vendor popping out or an existing HCI vendor out there, I ask a simple question to our customers saying, show me 100 customers with 100 node deployments. And it'll be very hard to find any other vendor out there that does the same thing, right? And that's the power of Acropolis, the core platform. And then it's the fact that the velocity associated with Acropolis continues to be on a fast pace. We came out with various new capabilities in 5.5 and 5.6. And one of the most complicated things to get right was the fact to shrink our 3-node cluster to a 1-node, 2-node deployment, right? Most of you actually had requirements on remote office, branch office, or the edge that actually allowed us to kind of give us the, sort of like the impetus to kind of go design some new capabilities into our core OS to kind of get this out. And associated with Acropolis and expanding into Prism, as you will see, the first couple of years of Prism was all about refactoring the user interface, doing a good job with automation. But more and more of the investments around Prism is going to be based on machine learning. And you've seen some variants of that over the last 12 months, and I can tell you that in the next 12 to 24 months, most of our investments around infrastructure operations are going to be driven by AI techniques, starting with most of our R&D spend also going into machine learning algorithms, right? And so when you talk about all the enhancements that have come on with Prism, whether it be formed by the management console changing to become much more automated, whether now we can give you automatic right sizing, anomaly detection, and a series of functionality that have gone into it, the real core sort of capabilities that we're putting into Prism and Acropolis are probably best served by looking at the quality of the product. So and you probably have seen this slide before, we started showing the number of nodes shipped by Nutanix 2 years ago at this conference. It was about 35,000 plus nodes at that time. And since then, obviously, we've continued to grow. And we would draw this line, which was about enterprise class quality, that for the number of bugs found as a percentage of nodes shipped, there's a certain line that's drawn. World-class companies do about probably 2 to 3%. Number of CFDs per node shipped. And we had just broken that number 2 years ago. And to give you guys an idea of how that curve has shown up, it's now currently at 0.95%. And so along with velocity, this focus on being true to our roots of reliability and stability continues to be our, it's an internal challenge, but it's also some of the things that we keep a real focus on. And so between Acropolis and Prism, that's sort of like our core focus areas to sort of give us the confidence that, look, we have this really high bar that we've sort of keeping ourselves accountable to, which is about being the most advanced enterprise cloud OS on the planet. And we will keep it this way for the next 10 years. And to complement that, over a period of time, of course, we have added a series of services. So these are services not just for VMs, but also for files, blocks, containers, but all being delivered in that single one-click operations fashion. And to really talk more about it, and actually probably to show you the real deal there, it's my great pleasure to call our own version of Moses inside the company. Most of you guys know him as Steve Poitras. Come on up, Steve.
Thanks, sit down.
You barely fit in that door, man. OK. So what are we going to talk about today, Steve?
Absolutely. So when we think about when Nutanix first got started, it was really focused around VDI deployment, smaller workloads. However, over time, as we've evolved the product, added additional capabilities and features, that's grown from VDI to business-critical applications, as well as cloud-native apps. So let's go ahead and take a look.
And we'll start with like Oracle.
Yeah, that's one of the key ones. So here we can see our Prism Central user interface. And we can see our Thor cluster, obviously speaking to the Avengers theme here. We can see this is doing right around 400,000 IOPS at around 360 microseconds latency. Now, obviously, Prism Central allows you to manage all of your Nutanix deployments, but this is just running on one single Nutanix cluster. So if we hop over here to our Explore tab, we can see we have a few categories. We have some Kubernetes, some AFS, some Zen Desktop, as well as Oracle RAC. Now, if we hop over to Oracle RAC, we're running a slob workload here. So obviously, with Oracle Enterprise applications, performance, consistency, and extremely low latency are very critical. So with this slob workload, we're running right around 300 microseconds of latency.
So this is what? How many node Oracle RAC cluster is this?
This is a 6-node Oracle RAC deployment.
Got it. Got it. And so what has gone into the product in the recent releases to kind of make this happen?
Yeah, so obviously on the hardware front, there's been a lot of evolutions in storage mediums. So with the introduction of NVMe, persistent memory technologies like 3D XPoint, that's meant storage media has become a lot faster. Now, to allow you to fully take advantage of that, that's where we've had to do a lot of optimizations within the storage stack. So with AHV, we have what we call AHV Turbo Mode, which allows you to fully take advantage of those faster storage mediums at that much lower latency. And then obviously on the networking front, technologies such as RDMA can be leveraged to optimize that network stack.
Got it. So that was Oracle rack running on a Nutanix cluster. It used to be a big deal a couple of years ago. Now we've got many customers doing that. On the same environment, though, what we're going to show you is the advent of actually putting file services in the same scale-out environment. And many of you in the audience probably know about AFS. We released it about 12 to 14 months ago. It's been one of our most popular new products of all time within Nutanix's history. And we had SMB support. It was for user file shares, VDI deployments. And it took a while to bake, to get to scale and reliability. And then in the last release, in the recent release that we just shipped, we now added NFS v4 support so that we can now go after the full-scale file server consolidation, right? So let's take a look at some of that stuff.
Yep, let's do it. So hopping back over to Prism, we can see our Thor cluster here. Overall cluster-wide latency right around 360 microseconds. And we'll hop down to our file server section. So here we can see we have our Next A file server hosting right around 16.2 million files. Now, if we look at our shares and exports, we can see we have a mix of different shares. So one of the shares that you see there is home directories. So this is an SMB share, which is actually mapped and being leveraged by our VDI desktops for home folders, user profiles, things of that nature. We can also see this Oracle backup share here, which is exposed to our rack host via NFS. So our man is actually leveraging this to provide native database backups.
Got it. So Oracle VMs, backup using files, or for any other file share requirements with AFS. Do we have the cluster also showing? So I saw some Kubernetes as well on it. Let's talk a little bit about what we're thinking of doing there, right?
Yep, let's do it. So if we think about cloud, cloud's obviously a big buzzword, so is containers and Kubernetes. So with ACS 1.0, what we did is we introduced native support for Docker integration.
And pause there, and we screwed up. So just like the market took a left turn on Kubernetes, obviously we realized that, and now we're working on ACS 2.0, which is what we're going to talk about, right?
Exactly, exactly. So with ACS 2.0, we've introduced native Kubernetes support. Now, when I think about Kubernetes, there's really two core areas that come to mind. The first one is around native integration. So with that, we have our Kubernetes volume integration. We're obviously doing a lot of work on the networking front, and we'll continue to push there from an integration point of view. Now, the other piece is around the actual deployment of Kubernetes. When we think about a lot of Nutanix administrators or IT admins, they may have never deployed Kubernetes before. So this could be a very daunting task. And true to the Nutanix nature, we not only want to make our platform simple and intuitive, we also want to do this for any ecosystem products. So with ACS 2.0, we've simplified the full Kubernetes deployment. And switching over to our ACS 2 interface, we can see this Create Cluster button. Now, this actually pops up a full wizard. This wizard will actually walk you through the full deployment process, gather the necessary inputs for you, and in a matter of a few clicks and a few minutes, we have a full Kubernetes deployment, fully provisioned, the masters, the workers, all the networking, fully done for you, very simple and intuitive.
Got it.
Now, if we hop back over to Prism, we can see we have this ACS 2 Kubernetes category. Clicking on that, we can see we have 8 instances, virtual machines. And here are Kubernetes virtual machines, which have actually been deployed as part of this ACS 2 installer. Now, one of the nice things is it makes the IT administrator's job very simple and easy to do. The deployment, straightforward. Monitoring and management, very straightforward and simple. Now, for the developer, the application architect, or engineers, they interface and interact with Kubernetes just like they would traditionally on any platform.
Got it. So the goal of ACS is to ensure that the developer ecosystem still uses whatever tools that they are preferring, while at the same time allowing this consolidation of containers along with VMs on that same single runtime, right? Yeah. So that's ACS. And then if you think about where the OS is going, there's still some open space at the end. And the open space has always been, look, if you just look at a public cloud, you look at blocks, files, containers, the most obvious sort of storage function that's left is objects. And that's the last horizon for us in completing the storage stack. And we're going to show you for the first time a preview of an upcoming product called the Acropolis Object Storage Services stack, right? So let's talk a little bit about it and then maybe show the demo.
Yeah. Yeah, so just like we provided file services with AFS block services with ABS. With OSS, or our object storage services, we provide native object storage compatibility and capability within the Nutanix platform. Now, this provides a very simple, common S3 API. So any integrations you've done with S3, especially Kubernetes, you can actually leverage that out of the box when you've deployed this. Now, if we hop back over to Prism, I'll go here to my object stores menu. And here we can see we have 2 existing object storage instances which are running. So you can deploy however many of these as you wanted to. Now, just like the Kubernetes deployment, deploying a new object instance is very simple and easy to do. So here, I'll actually name this instance Thor's Hammer.
You do know he loses it, right?
Yeah. I can call it Storm.
He hasn't seen the movies yet.
Yeah, I don't want any spoilers
right.
yet.
Yeah.
So once we specified the name, we could choose our capacity. So here we'll just specify our large instance or type. Obviously, this could be any amount of storage. So if you have a 200-node Nutanix cluster with petabytes worth of data, you could do that as well. Once we've selected that, we'll select our expected performance. And this is going to be the number of concurrent gets and puts. So essentially, how many operations per second we want this instance to be able to facilitate. Once we've done that, the platform will actually automatically determine how many virtual machines it needs to deploy, as well as the resources and specs for those. And once we've done that, we'll go ahead and click Save. Now, here we can see it's actually going through, doing the deployment of the virtual machines, applying any necessary configuration. And in a matter of a few clicks and a few seconds, we actually have this Thor's Hammer object storage instance, which is up and running. Now, if we hop over to one of our existing object storage instances, we can see this has 3 buckets. So one for Kafka Q. I'm actually using this for my Kafka cluster, where I have right around 62 million objects, all storing protobufs. And the second one there is Spark. So I actually have a Spark cluster running on our Kubernetes deployed instance via ACS 2.0. Now, this is doing analytics on top of this data using S3 as a storage backend. Now, for these objects, we support native versioning, native object encryption, as well as worm compliancy. So if you want to have expiry periods, retention intervals, that sort of thing, we can do all that.
Got it. Got it. So essentially, what we've just shown you is with upcoming objects as well, that the same OS can now support VMs, files, objects, containers, all on the same one-click operational fabric, right? And so that's, in some way, the real power of Nutanix, is to still keep that consistency, scalability in place as we are covering each and every workload inside the enterprise. So before Steve gets off stage, though, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about something that, how many of you have been to our Nutanix headquarters in San Jose, California? A few. I know there's like, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 people here. If you do come to the office, it's when you land in San Jose Airport, on the way to long-term parking, you'll pass our office. It's that close. And if you come to the 4th floor, one of the cubes, that's where I sit. And the cube beside me is Steve. Steve sits in the cube beside me. And when I first joined the company 3-4 years ago, and Steve's, if you go to his cube, it no longer looks like this, but it used to have a lot of this stuff. Okay, like it was like big containers of this. If I remember the first time. Since I started joking about it, he started reducing it. And then, Steve eventually got married, much to our surprise. Much to his wife's surprise. And then he also had a baby as a bigger surprise, right?
Yep.
And if you come over to our office, and we welcome you, and you come to the 4th floor, find my cube, or you'll find Steve's cube, it now looks like this. Okay? But thanks a lot, my man.
Cool.
Thanks so much. All right.
Thanks, man.
So, single OS, any workload. And like Steve, who's been with us for a while, it's my great pleasure to invite one of our favorite customers, CSC, Karen, who's also been with us for 3 to 4 years. And I'll share some fond memories about how she's been with the company for a while, how as partners we've really done a lot together. So without any further ado, let me bring up Karen. Come on up, Karen.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So I remember, so how many of you guys were with Nutanix first .next in Miami? I know there was a question like that asked last time. Not too many. We missed it. We wish we could go back to that. We wouldn't fit, 3/4 of this crowd. But Karen was our first customer in the keynote in 2015. And we had just talked about that story at that time where you're just become a customer, right? Do you want to give us some recap of that?
Sure. So when we made the decision to move to hyperconverged infrastructure and chose Nutanix as our partner, we rapidly started to deploy. And what I mean by that is Sunil and some of the Nutanix executives had come out to visit with us and talk about their product on a Tuesday. And on a Wednesday, after making the decision, I picked up the phone and said, you know what? I've got to deploy for my VDI cluster. So 4 nodes showed up on Thursday, and from the time it was plugged in to moving over 300 VDIs and 50 terabytes of storage and turning it over for the business for use was less than 3 days. So it was really excellent testament to how simple it is to start and deploy and utilize the Nutanix infrastructure. Now, part of that was the delight that we experienced from our customers after that deployment. So we got phone calls where people were saying, this report, it used to take so long that I'd go out and get a cup of coffee and come back and read an article and do some email, and then finally it would finish. Those reports are running in milliseconds now. It's one click, it's very, very simple, and we've delighted our customers. Now, across that journey, we have gone from the simple workloads like VDIs to the much more complex workloads around Splunk and Hadoop. And what's really interesting about our Splunk deployment is we're handling over 1 billion events being logged every day. And the deployment is smaller than what we had with a 3-tiered infrastructure. So when you hear people talk about waste and getting that out and getting to an invisible environment where you're just able to run it, that's what we were able to achieve, both with everything that we're running, from our public-facing websites to the back office operations that we're using, which include Splunk, and even most recently, our Cloudera and Hadoop infrastructure, which is, what it does is it's got 30 crawlers that go out on the internet and start bringing data back. So it comes back with over 2 terabytes of data every day, and then that environment ingests that data, does work against it, and responds to the business. And that, again, is something that's smaller than what we had on traditional infrastructure, and it's faster and more stable.
Got it. And it covers a lot of use cases as well. You want to speak a few words on that?
So the use cases, I mean, we're 90% deployed, 95% deployed on Nutanix, and we're covering all of our use cases. So whether that's a customer-facing app or a back-office application. And what our business is doing is it's handling large portfolios of data for Fortune 500 companies and law firms. And these applications are all running with improved stability, reliability, and performance on the Nutanix infrastructure.
And the plan going forward?
Well, so the plan going forward, you actually asked me that in Miami, and it's go global. So when we started in Miami and that first deployment, we had 4 nodes. We now have 283 nodes around the world. And we started with about 50 terabytes of data. We've now got 3.8 petabytes of data. Wow. And we're deployed across 4 data centers and 6 remote offices. And people ask me often, what is the value that we achieved? And so simplification. It's all just easier, and it's all less expensive. Being able to scale with the business. So our Cloudera environment ended up with one day where it spiked to 1,000 times more load, 1,000 times. And it just responded. We had rally cries around improved productivity by 6 times. So 600% improved productivity. And we were able to actually achieve that. The numbers you just saw on the slide that was very, very fast was we calculated a 40% reduction in total cost of ownership. We've exceeded that. And when we talk about waste, that other number on the board there is when I save the company 1 hour of maintenance activity or unplanned downtime in a month, which we are now able to do the majority of our maintenance activities without disrupting any of our business solutions, I'm saving $750,000 each time I save that 1 hour.
Wow. All right, Karen from CSE, thank you so much. That's great. That's great. Thank you. There's some, I mean, you know, some of these data points, frankly, as I started talking to Karen as well as some of the other customers, are pretty amazing in terms of the genuine value beyond financial value, kind of like the emotional sort of, you know, benefits that good products deliver to some of our customers, right? And I think that's one of the core things that we take back into engineering is to keep ourselves honest around either velocity or quality or even hiring people and so forth, is to actually, the more we touch customers' lives, the more we touch our partners' lives, the more it allows us to ensure that we can put ourselves in their shoes to kind of make sure that we're doing the right thing in terms of the product. So that was the first part, invisible infrastructure. And our goal, as we've always talked about, our true north, is to make sure that this single OS can be an exact replica, a truly modern, thoughtful, but original design that brings the power of public cloud, whether it's AWS or GCP-like architectures, into your mainstream enterprises, right? And so when we take that to the next level, which is about expanding the scope to go beyond invisible infrastructure to invisible data centers, it starts with a few things. Obviously, it starts with virtualization and level of intelligent management, extends to automation, and then, as we'll talk about, we have to embark on encompassing the network. And that's what we'll talk about with Flow. But to start this, let me again go back to one of our core products, which is the bedrock of our opinionated design inside this company, which is Prism and Acropolis. And Prism Pro, as I mentioned, comes with a ton of machine learning-based intelligence built into the product. In 5.6, we've done a ton of work. In fact, a lot of features are coming out now because now that PC, Prism Central, that you know, has been decoupled from our mainstream release train and will continue to release on its own cadence. And the same thing, when you actually flip it to AHV, on its own train, now AHV, 2 years ago, it was all about, can I use AHV for VDI? Can I use AHV for Robo? Now I'm pretty clear about where you cannot use AHV. If you need memory overcommit, stay with VMware or something, right? If you need Metro, stay with another technology. Else, it's game on, right? And if you really look at the adoption of AHV in the mainstream enterprise, the customers now speak for themselves. These are all examples of large global enterprises with multi-million-dollar ELAs in play that have now been swept over, right? And if you think about, I'll give you a simple example here, and there's lots of these that I'm sure many of you are in the audience that are in this camp. But when you look at the breakout sessions and the pods, you'll get a sense of this. But I'll give you one simple example. If you look at the online payment company, I'm pretty sure everybody has used this one time or the other. They had the world's largest private cloud on OpenStack, 21,000 nodes. And they were actually public about it 3-4 years ago. And in the last year and a half, they've put us through a rigorous POC, testing scale, hardening, and it's a full-blown AHV-only stack. And they've started cutting over. Obviously, they're not there yet completely, but they're now literally in hundreds of nodes of deployment of Nutanix with AHV as their primary operating system. So it is prime time from a deployment perspective. And with that as the base, though, no cloud is complete without actually having self-service provisioning that truly drives one-click automation, right? And can you do that in this consumer-grade design? And Calm was acquired, as you guys know, in 2016. We had a choice. We had a choice of taking Calm. It was reasonably feature complete. It supported multiple clouds. It supported ESX. It supported Brownfield. It supported AHV. I mean, they'd already done the integration with Nutanix even before the acquisition. And we had a choice. The choice was go down the path of dynamic ops or some of the products where you took it for revenue or for acceleration, you plopped it onto the ecosystem and sold it as this power-sucking alien on top of our stack, right? Or we took a step back, re-engineered the product, kept some of the core essence, like the workflow engine, which was good, the automation, the object model, and all, but refactored it to make it look like a natural extension of our operating system. And that's what we did with Calm. And we just launched it in December, and it's been one of our most popular new products now that's flying now off the shelves. If you saw the number of registrants, I got a notification of this for the breakout sessions. The #1 session that has been registered with over 500 people, the first 2 sessions are around Calm. And justifiably so, because it just, as it lives up to its promise, and it'll take its time to kind of get to all the bells and whistles, all the capabilities that have come through with AHV or Acropolis in the past. But the feature functionality, the product market fit associated with Calm is dead on from what the feedback that we can receive. And so Calm itself is on its own rapid cadence. We had AWS and AHV in the first release. 3-4 months later, we now added ESX support. We added GCP support and a whole bunch of other capabilities. And I think the essence of Calm is if you can combine Calm and along with private cloud automation, but also extend it to multi-cloud automation, it really sets Nutanix on its first genuine path towards multi-cloud. But then, as I said, if you really fixate on a software-defined data center message, we are not complete as a full-blown AWS or GCP-like IaaS stack until we do the last horizon of networking. And you've probably heard me say this before. You've heard Dheeraj and others talk about it before, is our problem in networking isn't the same in storage, right? Because the data plane in networking works. Good L2 switches from Cisco, Arista, and so forth. But the real problem in networking is in the control plane. When something goes wrong at a VM level, in Nutanix, you're able to identify whether it's a storage problem or a compute problem, but we don't know whether it's a VLAN that's misconfigured or there have been some packets dropped to the top of the rack. Well, that all ends now with Flow. And with Flow, essentially what we have now done is take the work that we've been working on to create built-in visibility, put some network automation so that you can actually provision VLANs when you provision VMs, and then augment it with microsegmentation policies, all built in this easy-to-use consume fashion. But we didn't stop there. Because we've been talking about Flow, at least the capabilities, over the last year. We spent significant resources building it, but we realized that we needed an additional thing to augment its value. Because the world of applications, especially discovering application topologies, is a hairy problem. And if we didn't address that, we wouldn't be fulfilling on this ambition of providing one-click network segmentation. And so that's where Netsil comes in. Netsil might seem on the surface yet another next-generation application performance management tool, but the innovations that came from Netsil started off at a research project at University of Pennsylvania. And in fact, most of the team right now that's at Nutanix is from that UPenn research group. And they took a really original, fresh look at how do you sit in the network in a scale-out fashion, but still reverse engineer the packets that flow through you, and then recreate this application topology. And recreate this not just on Nutanix, but do it seamlessly across multiple clouds. And to talk about the power of Flow, augmented with Netsil, let's bring Rajiv back on stage. Rajiv.
How you doing?
OK. So we're going to start with some Netsil stuff, right?
Yeah, let's talk about Netsil and some of the amazing capabilities this acquisition's bringing to Nutanix. First of all, as you mentioned, Netsil's completely non-invasive. So it installs on the network. It does all its magic from there. There are no host agents, none of the complexity and compatibility issues that entails. It's also monitoring the network at layer 7. So it's actually doing a deep packet inspection on all your application data and can give you insights into services and APIs, which is really important for modern applications and the way they behave. To do all this, of course, performance is key. So Netsil is built around a completely distributed architecture, scales to really large workloads. Very exciting technology. We're going to use it in many different ways at Nutanix. And to give you a flavor of that, let me show you how we're thinking of integrating Flow and Netsil together, so microsegmentation and Netsil. So to do that, we install Netsil in one of our Google accounts, and that's what's up here right now. It went out there. It discovered all the VMs we are running on that account. It created a map, essentially, of all their interactions. And you can see it's kind of a Google Maps view. I can zoom into it. I can look at various things running. I can see lots of HTTP servers over here, some databases.
And it also has stats, right? If you can go in, it actually opens.
It does.
Stats.
We'll take a look at that for a second. There are some stats you can look at right over here, things like transactions per second and latencies and so on. But if I wanted to microsegment this application, it's not really clear how to do so. There's no real pattern over here. If you're taking the Google Maps analogy a little further, this kind of looks like the back streets of Cairo or something. So let's do this step by step. Let me first filter down to one application. Right now, I'm looking at about 3 or 4 different applications. And Netsil integrates with the metadata services that the clouds provide. So I can search on the tags that I have. So by doing that, I can zoom in on just the financial application. And when I do this, the view gets a little bit simpler, but it's still no real pattern. It's not clear how I would microsegment this, right? And this is where the power of Netsil comes in. This is a fairly naive view. This is what a tool operating at layer 4, just looking at ports and TCP traffic, would give you. But by doing deep packet inspection, Netsil can get into the services layer. So instead of grouping these interactions by host name, let's group them by service. So we go service tier. And now you can see this is a much simpler picture. Now I have some patterns. I have a couple of load balancers, an HA proxy, and an Nginx. I have a web application front end. I have some application servers running authentication services, search services, et cetera, a database, and a database replica. I could go ahead and microsegment at this point. It's quite possible to do it at this point. But this is almost too granular a view. We actually don't usually want to microsegment at individual service level. We think more in terms of application tiers, the tiers that different services belong to. So let me go ahead and group this differently. Let me group this by app tier. And when I do that, a really simple picture emerges. I have a load balancing tier talking to a web application front-end tier, an API tier, and a database tier. 4 tiers in my application. And this is something I can work with. This is something that I can microsegment fairly easily. So let's switch over to...
Before we do that, though, I see, do you guys notice how he gave himself this pseudonym called Dom Toretto?
Focus, Sunil, focus.
Yeah. For those guys, that's not the Avengers theme, man. That's the Fast and Furious theme.
I think a year ahead. So
you'll get to that later?
This is next year's theme.
Got it. Okay. So before we cut over from Netsil to Flow, do we want to talk a few words about the power of Flow and what's available in 5.6?
Sure. So Flow's been around since the 5.6 release. It's actually some of the functionality came in before that. So it's got invisibility into the network, helps you debug problems with VLANs and so on. We had a lot of orchestration with other third-party vendors, with load balancers, with switches to make provisioning much simpler. And then, of course, with our most recent release, we GA'd our microsegmentation capabilities. And that, of course, is the most important feature we have in Flow right now. And if we look at how a Flow policy is set up, it looks very similar to what we just saw with Netsil, right? So we have load balancer talking to web app, API, database. It's almost identical to what we saw just a moment ago. So while this policy was created manually, it is something that we can automate, and it is something that we will do in future releases. Right now, it's, of course, not been integrated at that level yet, so this was created manually. So one thing you'll notice over here is that the database tier doesn't get any direct traffic from the internet. All internet traffic goes to the load balancer. Only specific services can talk to the database. So this policy right now is in monitoring mode. It's not actually being enforced. So let's see what happens if I try to attack the database. Let's try to hack against the database. And I have my trusty brute force password script over here. It's trying the most common passwords against the database. And if I happen to choose a dictionary word or left the default passwords on, eventually it will log into the database. And when I go back over here, in flow, what happens is it actually detects that's now an ungoverned flow, a flow that's outside of policy that's shown up, and it shows this in yellow. So right alongside the policy, I can visualize all the non-compliant flows. This makes it really easy for me now to make decisions. This flow, should it be part of the policy? Should it not? In this particular case, obviously, it should not be part of the policy. So let me just switch from monitoring mode to enforcement mode. I'll apply the policy, give it a second to propagate. The flow goes away. And if I go back to my script, you can see now the socket's timing out. I can no longer connect to the database.
Got it. So that's like one-click segmentation in play right now.
Absolutely. It's really, really simple. You can compare it to other products in the space. You can't get simpler than this.
Got it. Why don't we go back and talk a little bit more about, so that's Flow, that's shipping down 5.6. Obviously, it'll come integrated with Netsil functionality as well as a variety of other enhancements in the next few releases. But Netsil does more than just simple topology discovery, right?
Absolutely. So Netsil is actually gathering a lot of metrics from your network, from your host. All this goes through a data pipeline. It gets processed over there, and then gets captured in a time series database. And then we can slice and dice that in various different ways. It can be used for all kinds of insights. So let's see how our application is behaving. So let me say I want to go into the API layer over here. And I instantly get a variety of metrics on how the application is behaving. I get the most requested endpoints. I get the average latency. It looks reasonably good. I get the average latency of the slowest endpoints. If I was having a performance problem, I would know exactly where to go focus on. Right now, things look pretty good, so we won't focus on that. But scrolling back up, I noticed that we have a fairly high error rate happening. We have like 11.35% of our HTTP requests are generating errors, and that deserves some attention. And if I scroll down again and I see the top 5 status codes I'm getting, almost 10% of my requests are generating 500 errors, HTTP 500 errors, which are internal server errors. So there's something going on that's wrong with this application. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that. Let me go into my analytics workbench over here. And what I've plotted over here is how my HTTP requests are behaving over time. Let me filter down to just the 500 ones. That will make it easier. And I want the 500s. And I'll also group this by the service tier so that I can see which services are causing the problem. And the better view for this will be a bar graph. Yes. So once I do this, you can see that all the errors, all the 500 errors that we're seeing, have been caused by the authentication service. So something's obviously wrong with that part of my application. I can go look at whether Active Directory is misbehaving, and so on. So very quickly, from a broad problem that I was getting a high HTTP error rate, in fact, usually you would discover this as customers complaining about a lot of errors happening in your application. You can quickly narrow down to exactly what the cause was.
Got it. This is what we mean by hyperconvergence of the network, which is if you can truly isolate network-related problems and associate them with the rest of the hyperconverged infrastructure, then we've essentially started making real progress towards the next level of hyperconvergence, right? Anyway, thanks a lot, man. Great job.
Thanks, man. Right. Around.
So to talk about this evolution from invisible infrastructure to invisible data centers is another customer of ours that has embarked on this journey. And it's just not just using Nutanix, but a variety of other tools to actually fulfill sort of like the ambition of a full-blown cloud stack within a financial organization. And to talk more about that, let me call Vijay on stage. Come on up, Vijay.
Hey.
Thank you, sir. So Vijay looks way better in real life than in a picture, by the way.
Except
unlike
bit of
me.
gray, except
me.
that.
Unlike me. So tell me a little bit about this cloud initiative.
Yep. So we've won the Best Cloud Initiative twice now, hosted by Incisive Media on Waters Magazine. It's basically they host a bunch of financial, various buy side, sell side, and you can submit projects that you've in various categories. So we've won the best cloud twice now, 2015 and 2017. The 2017 award was when, as part of our private cloud journey, we were laying the foundation for our private cloud, which is 100% based on converged, hyper-converged infrastructure. So that was that award. And then 2017, we've kind of built on that foundation and built more developer-centric next-gen app services like PaaS, CaaS, SDN, SDS, CI/CD, et cetera. So we've built a lot of those services on, and the second award was really related to that.
Got it. And a lot of this was obviously based on an infrastructure strategy with some guiding principles that you guys had about 3-4 years ago, if I remember.
Yep. Yeah, this is a great slide. I use it very often. At the core of our infrastructure strategy is how do we run IT as a business. And I talk about this with my teams. They were very familiar with this. That's the mindset that I instill within the teams. The mission, the challenge is the same, which is how do we scale infrastructure while reducing total cost of ownership, improving time to market, improving client experience, and while we're doing that, not lose sight of reliability, stability, and security. That's the mission. Those are some of our guiding principles. Whenever we take on some large technology investments, we take them through those lenses. Obviously, Nutanix went through those lenses when we invested in you guys many, many years ago, and you guys checked all the boxes. And initiatives change year on year. The mission remains the same. And more recently, last few years, we've been focused on converged platforms, converged teams. We've actually reorganized our teams and aligned them closer to the platforms.
Got it.
Moving closer to more of a SRE-like concept.
Got it. And then you've built out a full stack now, right? Across compute storage, networking, all the way with various use cases in play.
Yeah, and we're aggressively moving toward PaaS, CaaS as our method of either developing brand new cloud-native applications or even containerizing existing applications. So the stack, obviously built on Nutanix, SDS for software-defined storage, compute and networking. We've got SDN turned on. We've got, again, PaaS and CaaS built on this platform. And then finally, we've hooked on our CI/CD tooling onto this.
Got it.
And again, the big picture vision was always frictionless infrastructure, which we're very close to now. 100% of our code deployments into this environment are automated.
Got it, got it. And so what's the net in terms of, obviously, the business takeaway here?
Yeah, so at Northern, we don't do tech for tech. It has to be some business benefits, client benefits. There has to be some outcomes that we measure ourselves against. And these are some great metrics or great ways to look at if our investments are, we're getting the outcomes from the investments we're making. So, for example, infrastructure scale while reducing total cost of ownership. We're very focused on total cost of ownership. We, for example, there was a build team that was very focused on building servers, deploying applications. That team's gone down from, I think, 40, 45 people to about 15 people.
Got it.
As one example, one metric. Another metric for reducing time to market or reducing TCO is we've been able to absorb additional capacity without increasing operating expenses. So you're actually building capacity and scale within your operating model. So that's another example. Another example right here you see on the screen, faster time to market. We've got various types of applications at any given point that we're deploying. There's a next-gen cloud native, which go directly on PaaS, but then majority of the applications still need the traditional IaaS components. The time to market to deploy a complex multi-environment, multi-data center application, we've taken that down by 60%. So we can deliver servers same day, but we can deliver entire environments. Added to backup, added to DNS, and fully compliant within a couple of weeks, which is something we measure very closely.
Great job, man. I mean, that's compelling, I think, results. And in the journey, obviously, you got promoted a few times.
Yeah.
All right. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vijay. Yeah. By the way, hey, Vijay, come back up. Actually, we forgot our joke. Come back up. Yeah. so razzled by his data points there. So you're supposed to wear some shoes, right?
I know. A little bit of minor glitch. I was going to wear those sneakers.
Yeah.
But I forgot them at the office, maybe for the right reasons.
Yeah.
But the story behind those fluorescent sneakers, I see the focus on my shoes. But I picked those up about 2 years ago at a Next event, and not my style. I took them to my office. They've been sitting in my office for the last couple of years.
Who's received shoes like these, by the way? I'm sure some of you guys have received shoes like these. See, there's some real.
Yeah. So again, I'm sure many of you like them. I had it in my office. I've offered it to so many of my engineers. I use size 11. Do you want these? And they're unclaimed.
Yeah.
So
that's the only feature of Nutanix that you don't.
That's the only one thing that hasn't worked. Other than that, things are going extremely well.
Good job, man. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thanks, Vijay. So, as we get to the final phase, which is obviously, as we embark on this multi-cloud journey, and the complexity that comes with it, which Dheeraj hinted towards, right, in his session, we have to take a cautious, thoughtful approach here because we don't want to overset expectations, because this will take us 5-10 years to really do a good job, like we've done in the first act. And the good news is that the market is also really, really early here. It's just a fact, okay? And so we've taken a tiered approach to it, as we'll start the discussion with multi-cloud operations. And we've talked about the stack in the prior session, which is about, look, across new clouds, so it's no longer Nutanix, Dell, Lenovo, HP, Cisco as the new quote-unquote platforms. It's Nutanix, Xi, GCP, AWS, Azure as the new platforms. That's how we're designing the fabric going forward. And on top of that, you obviously have the hybrid OS, both on the data plane side and the control plane side. But then what you're seeing with the advent of Calm doing a marketplace and automation, as well as Beam doing governance and compliance, is the fact that you'll see more and more such capabilities of multi-cloud operations burnt into the platform. An example of that is Calm with the new 5.7 release that they had. Now supports multiple clouds, both inside and outside. But the fundamental premise of Calm in the multi-cloud use case is to enable you to choose the right cloud for the right workload. That's the automation part. On the governance part, and this we kind of went through in the last half an hour, and Dheeraj and Vijay on stage, is something that's even more, if I could call it, first order. Because you get to provisioning and operations second. The first order is to say, look, whatever my developers have consumed of public cloud, I just need to first get an arm around to make sure that, what am I spending? Am I secure? And then when I get comfortable, then I'm able to actually expand on it. And that's the power of Beam. And both Beam and Calm will be the yin and yang for us in our multi-cloud portfolio. And we will have new products to complement that down the road, right? But along the way, that's the whole private cloud, public cloud. They're the two ends of the barbell. And over time, and we've been working on Xi for a while, is this conviction that we've built, talking to many customers, that there needs to be another type of cloud. And this type of a cloud has to feel like a public cloud. It has to be architected like a public cloud, be consumed like a public cloud, but it needs to be an extension of my data center. It should not require any changes to my tooling. It should not require any changes to my operational infrastructure. And it should not require lift and shift. And that's a super hard problem. And this problem is something that a chunk of our R&D team has been burning the midnight wick on for the last year and a half. And because, look, this is not about taking our current OS, which does a good job of scaling, and plopping it into an Equinix or a third-party data center and calling it a hybrid cloud. This is about rebuilding things in the OS so that we can deliver a true hybrid cloud, but at the same time, give those functionality back on-premise so that even if you don't have a hybrid cloud, if you just have your own data centers, we'll still need new services like DR, right? And if you think about it, what are we doing? We're building a full-blown multi-tenant virtual network designed in a modern way. Think about this as SDN 2.0, because we have 10 years worth of looking backwards on how GCP has done it or how Amazon has done it, and now sort of embodying some of that so that we can actually give it as part of this cloud, but do it in a way that's a seamless extension of the data center. and then at the same time, provide new services that have never been delivered before. Everybody obviously does failover and failback in DR. It just takes months to do it. Our goal is to do it in hours or minutes. But even things such as test. Imagine doing a DR test on demand for your business needs in the middle of a day. And that's the real bar that we have set for Xi that we're working towards an early access later this summer with a GA later in the year. And to talk more about this, let me invite some of our core architects working on it, Melina and Rajiv.
You're messing up the names again.
Oh, Rajiv, Vinny, same thing, man.
Yeah,
Let's go.
You need to back up your memory from Xi.
Yeah, we should. OK, so what are we going to talk about? Binny.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about how Xi is pushing the envelope and going beyond the state of the art, as you were saying, in the industry. As part of that, there's a whole bunch of things that we have done, starting with taking a private cloud, seamlessly extending it to the public cloud, and then creating a hybrid cloud experience with one-click delight. We're going to show that. We've done a whole bunch of engineering work on making sure the operations and the tooling is identical on both sides. When you graduate from a private cloud to a hybrid cloud environment, you don't want the environments to be different. So we've copied all, the environment for you with zero manual intervention. And finally, building on top of that, we are delivering DR as a service with unprecedented simplicity, with one-click failover, one-click failback. And we're going to show you one-click test today. So Melina, why don't we start with showing how you go from a private cloud, seamlessly extended, to consume Xi. Right.
Sounds good. Thanks, Binny. Right now, you're looking at my Prism interface for my on-premises cluster. In one click, I'm going to be able to extend that to my Xi Cloud Services account. I'm doing this using my Nutanix credential and a password manager.
So here, as you notice, all the Nutanix customers that we have today, we have created an account for them in Xi by default. So you don't have to log in somewhere and create an account. It's there by default. Right.
And just like that, we've gone ahead and extended my data center. But let's go take a look at the Xi side and log in again with my Nutanix credentials. We'll see what we have over here. We're going to be able to see two availability zones, one for on-premises and one for Xi, right here.
Yeah, as you see, using a login account that you already knew, mynutanix.com, and 30 seconds in, you can see that you have a hybrid cloud view already. You have a private cloud availability zone, that's your own Prism Central data center view, and then a Xi availability zone.
Got it.
Exactly. But of course, we want to extend my network connection from on-premises to my Xi networks as well. So let's take a look at our options there. We have two ways of doing this. Both are a one-click experience. With Direct Connect, you can create a dedicated network connection between both environments. Or VPN, you can use a public internet and a VPN service. Let's go ahead and enable VPN in this environment.
Yeah.
Here we have two options for how we want to enable our VPN. We can bring our own VPN and connect it, or we will deploy a VPN for you on premises. We'll do the option where we deploy the VPN in one click.
And this is another small sign or a feature that we're building net new as part of Xi, but will be burnt into our core Acropolis OS so that we can also be delivering this as a standalone product for on-premise deployment as well, right? So that's one of the other things to note as you guys look at the Xi functionality. The goal is to keep the OS capabilities the same on both sides. So even if I'm building a quote-unquote multi-data center cloud, but it's just a private cloud, we'll still get all the benefits of Xi, but in-house.
Exactly. And on this second step of the wizard, there's a few inputs around how you want the gateway configured, your VLAN information, and routing and protocol configuration details. Just go ahead and save it.
So right now, what's happening is we're taking the private network that our customers have on premises and extending it to a multi-tenant public cloud, such that our customers can use their IP addresses, the subnets, and bring their own IP. That is another step towards making sure the operation and tooling is kept consistent on both sides.
Got it.
Exactly. And just while you guys were talking, the VPN was successfully created on premises, and we can see the details right here. You can track details like the status of the connection, the gateway, as well as bandwidth information right in the same UI.
And networking is just tip of the iceberg of what we've had to work on to make sure that you get a consistent experience on both sides.
Sure.
So, Melina, why don't we show some of the other things we have done?
Sure. To talk about how we preserve entities from my on-premises to Xi, it's better to use my production environment. And first thing you might notice is the login screen's a little bit different. But that's because I'm logging in using my ADFS credentials. The first thing we preserved was our users. In production, I'm running AD, obviously on-prem, and now we can log in here with the same set of credentials. Just push this.
And this is the Active Directory credential that our customers would have. They use it on premises. And we allow the setting to be set on the Xi Cloud services as well. So it's the same set of users that can access both sites.
Got it. There's always going to be some networking problem on stage.
Yeah.
It's meant to happen.
Yeah. There you go.
Just launching it again here. I think it may be timed out. This is a good sign that we're running on time with this presentation.
There you go. Yeah, we're running ahead
Move
of time.
the demos quicker than we will not time out. So essentially, when you log into Xi, you'll be able to see what are the environment capabilities that we have copied to the Xi environment. So for example, you just saw that the same user is being used to log in, but after the user logs in, you'll be able to see their images, for example, copied to the Xi site. You'll be able to see their policies and categories.
Yeah.
When you define these policies on premises, you spend a lot of effort and create them. And now when you're extending to the public cloud, you don't want to do it again, right?
Got it.
So we've done a whole lot of syncing mechanisms, making sure that the two sides are consistent.
Got it. And on top of these policies, the next step is to also show capabilities to actually do failover and failback, but also do integrated testing, right? As part of this capability.
So one is just the basic job of making the environments consistent on two sides. But then it's also now talking about the data part. And that's what DR is about. So if you have a workload running on premises, we can take the data and replicate it using your policies that we've already synced. Once the data is available on the Xi side, at that point you have to define a runbook. And the runbook essentially it's a recovery plan.
Got it.
And that says, OK, I already have the backups of my VMs. In case of disaster, I can take my recovery plan and hit either failover or maybe a test, right? And then my application comes up. First of all, you'll talk about a boot order for your VMs to come up. You'll talk about networking mapping. Like when I'm running on-prem, using a particular subnet, you have an option of using the same subnet on the Xi side. Or you could. What happened?
It's finally working?
Yeah.
Penny, you can stop talking. All right.
Okay. So
by the way, this is logging in to a live Xi data center. We have two regions, West Coast, 2 data centers, East Coast, 2 data centers. So everything that you're seeing is essentially coming off the mainstream Xi.
Melina, why don't we show the recovery plan? Right? That's the most interesting piece here.
Sure. The recovery plan is set up to help you specify how you want to recover your applications in the event of a failover or a test failover. And it specifies all sorts of details like the boot sequence for the VMs, as well as network mappings. Some of the network mappings are things like the production network I have running on premises and how it maps to my production network on Xi, or the test network to the test network. What's really cool here, though, is we're actually automatically creating your subnets on Xi from your on-premises subnets, all as part of the recovery plan. While we're on the screen, take a note of the .100 IP address. That's a floating IP address that I have set up to ensure that I'm going to be able to access my 3-tier web app that I have protected with this plan after a failover. So I'll be able to access it from the public internet, really easily ping it from my phone or check that it's all running.
Right. So given how we make the environment consistent on both sides, now we are able to create a very simple DR experience, right? Including failover in one click, failback. But we're going to show you test now. So Melina, let's talk about test, because that's one of the most common operations you would do. Like some of our customers do it every month. But usually it's very hard. So let's see how the experience looks like and what we built.
Sure. Test and failover are both one-click experiences, as you know and come to expect from Nutanix. You can see it's failing over from my primary location to my recovery location. Now, what we're doing right now is we're running a series of validation checks, because we want to make sure that you have your network configured properly, and there's other configuration details in place for the test to be successful. Looks like the failover was initiated successfully. Now, while that failover is happening, though, let's make sure that I'm going to be able to access my 3-tier web app once it fails over. We'll do that by looking at my network policies that I've configured on my test network, because I want to access the application from the public internet, but only port 80. And if we look here under our policies, you can see I have port 80 open to permit, so that's good. If I needed to create a new one, I could in one click. But it looks like we're good to go. Let's go back and check the status of my recovery plan. We click in, and what's really cool here is you can actually see the individual tasks as they're being completed, from that initial validation test to individual VMs being powered on as part of the recovery plan.
And to give you guys an idea behind the scenes, the entire recovery plan is actually a set of workflows that are built on Calm's automation engine. So this is an example of where we are taking some of the power of workflow and automation that Calm has come to be really strong at and burning that into how we actually operationalize many of these workflows for Xi.
And so, great. While you're explaining that, my 3-tier web app has restarted here on Xi, right in front of you. And you can see here there's a floating IP that I mentioned earlier, that .100 IP address. But let's go ahead and launch the console and make sure the application started up correctly.
Yeah, so that .100 IP address is a floating IP. That's a publicly visible IP. So it's listed here, 206.80.146.100. And that's essentially anybody in the audience here can go use your laptop or your cell phone and hit that and start to vote.
Yeah, so this is, by the way, just to give you guys an idea, while you guys maybe use the IP to kind of hit it, is a real set of VMs that we've just failed over from Nutanix's corporate data center into our West region, right?
Yeah, and this is running live on the Xi cloud.
Got it.
Yeah, you guys should all go and vote. I'm a little biased towards Xi, so vote for Xi. But all of them are really
scroll up a little
features.
bit. Let's see where Xi is.
Oh, Xi's here. I'll scroll down a little bit, but keep the.
Have you guys written a bot or something?
Oh, good. That looks like Xi's winning. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Great job, Melina. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melina.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Great job. Cool and calm under pressure. That's good. So that was Xi. What's something that we've been doing around, in addition to taking, say, our own extended enterprise public cloud with Xi, we do recognize that there are a ton of workloads that are going to be residing on AWS, GCP, Azure, and to sort of really assist in the, if I can call it, transformation of enterprises to choose the right cloud for the right workload. If you guys remember, we actually invested in a tool over last year, which became actually quite like a, one of those products that took off based on, groundswell movement. Most of you guys started using it. It's essentially extract for VMs. And it was this product that's obviously, free. It's a tool, but it enables customers to really save tons of time to actually migrate from legacy environments to Nutanix. So we took that same framework, obviously replatformed it for the multi-cloud world to kind of solve the problem of migrating from AWS or GCP to Nutanix or vice versa.
Yeah, right. So, Sunil, as you said, moving from a private cloud to the public cloud is a lift and shift, and it's a hard, operation. But moving back is not only expensive, it's a very hard problem, right? None of the cloud vendors provide change block tracking capability, right? And what that means is when you have to move back from the cloud, you have an extended period of downtime because there's no way of figuring out what's changing while you're moving. So you have to keep it down. So what we've done with our app mobility product is we've made sure that, one, it's extremely simple to move back. Two, that the downtime that you'll have is as small as possible. So let me show you what we've done.
Got it.
So here is our app mobility capability. As you can see, on the left-hand side, we have a source environment and target environment. So I'm calling my AWS environment Asgard. And I can add more environments. It's very simple. I can select AWS and then put in my credentials for AWS. It essentially goes and discovers all the VMs that are running and all the regions that are running. Target environment, this is my Nutanix environment. I call it Earth. And I can add target environment similarly, IP address and credentials, and we do the rest. Right? OK. Now, migration plans, I have Bifrost 1 is my migration plan. And this is how migration works. First, you create a plan, and then say, start seeding. And what it does is takes a snapshot of what's running in the cloud and starts migrating it to on-prem. Once it is in on-prem and the difference between the two sides is minimal, it says, I'm ready to cut over. Right? At that time, you move it. But let me show you how you create a new migration plan. Right? So let me name it Bifrost 2. All right? OK, so what I have to do is select a region, so US West 1, and target Earth is my cluster. This is my storage container there. And very quickly, you can see these are the VMs that are running in US West 1 in AWS. I can select SQL Server 1 and 2, go to Next. Right now, it's looking at the target Nutanix environment and seeing it has enough space or not. Once that's good, it gives me an option. And this is the step where it enables the Nutanix service of change block tracking overlaid on top of the cloud. There are two options. One is automatic, where you'll give us the credentials for your VMs, and we'll inject our capability there. Or manually, you can copy the command, either in a Windows VM or Linux VM, and run it once on the VM. And change block tracking, since then, is enabled. Everything is seamless after that. Hit Next.
And while Benny's setting it up, he said a few things there. I don't know if you guys caught it. One of the hardest problems in enabling seamless migration from public cloud to on-prem, which makes it harder than the other way around, is the fact that public cloud doesn't have things like change block tracking. You can't get Delta copies.
Yeah.
So one of the core innovations being built in this app mobility product is to provide that overlay capability across multiple clouds.
Yeah, and the last step here was to select the target network where the VMs will come up on the Nutanix environment. And this is a summary of the migration plan. You can start it or just save it. I'm saving it because it takes time to do the seeding. I have the other plan, which I'll actually show the cutover with. OK, so now this is Bifrost 1. It's ready to cut over. We started it 4 hours ago. And here you can see there's a SQL Server 003. OK? Now, I would like to show the AWS environment. As you can see, SQL Server 003. This VM is actually running in AWS right now. And if you go to the Prism environment, and if my login works, right? So we can go into the virtual machine view, tables, and you see the VM is not there. OK. So we go back to this, and we can hit cutover. So this is essentially telling our system, OK, now is the time, quiesce the VM running in AWS, take the last bit of changes that you have to the database, ship it to on-prem, and in on-prem, now start creating, configure the target VM and start bringing it up. Okay? So let's go and look at AWS and refresh that screen. And you should see, OK, so the SQL Server is now stopping. So that means it has quiesced and stopping the VM there. If you go back and look at the migration plan that we had, it says it's completed. So it has actually migrated all the data to the on-prem side. Go here on-prem, you see the production SQL Server is running already. Right? I can click Launch Console, and let's see, the Windows VM is already booting up.
So essentially, what Benny just showed was a live cutover of an AWS VM to Nutanix on-premise.
Yeah, and what we have done. So essentially, this is about making two things possible, making it simple to migrate from cloud to on-prem, and making it painless so the downtime that you have is very minimal.
Got it. Great job, Benny.
Thanks a lot.
All right, man. I won't forget your name again.
OK.
All right. So last step. So to really talk about this, one of our favorite partners and customers has been in the cloud environment for a long time. And Jason, who's the CTO for Cyxtera, and he'll introduce who Cyxtera is. Most of you guys are probably either using their assets or not without knowing their new name. But It's someone that was in the cloud before it was called cloud, as one of the original founders and technologists behind Terramark, and then later as one of the chief architects of VMware's cloud. And then they started this new company about a year or so ago, which I'll let Jason talk about. This journey that he's going to talk about is how a partner/customer is working with us to deliver net new transformations around the traditional industry of colo. Okay, to talk more about it, Jason, why don't you come up on stage, man? Thank you, sir. All right, so Cyxtera, obviously a lot of people don't know the name. Maybe just give a 10-second summary of why you're so big already.
Sure, yeah. So Cyxtera was formed, as you said, about a year ago through the acquisition of the CenturyLink data centers.
Which includes Savvis and a whole bunch of
other
assets.
there's a long history of those data centers, but we have all of them now, as well as the software companies owned by Medina Capital. So we're like the world's biggest startup now. So we have over 50 data centers around the world, about 3,500 customers, and a portfolio of security and analytics software.
Got it. And so you have this strategy of what we're calling revolutionizing colo, deliver a cloud-based.
Yeah, so colo hasn't really changed a lot in the last 20 years. And to be fair, a lot of what happens in data centers has to have a person physically go and do it. But there are some things that we can simplify and automate. So we want to make things more software-driven. So that's what we're doing with the Cyxtera Extensible Data Center, or CXD. And to do that, we're deploying software-defined networks in our facilities and developing automation so customers can go and provision data center services and network connectivity through a portal or through REST APIs.
Got it. And what's different now? I know there's a whole bunch of benefits with the integrated platform that one would not get in the traditional kind of on-demand data center environment.
Sure,
right?
yeah. So one of the first services we're launching on CXD is Compute on Demand, and it's powered by Nutanix. And we had to pick an HCI partner to launch with, and we looked at players in the space. And as you mentioned earlier, there's actually a lot of them, more than I thought. And we had a lot of conversations, did a lot of testing in the lab, and Nutanix really stood out as the best choice. Nutanix has a lot of focus on things like ease of deployment, so it's very simple for us to automate deploying compute for customers. So we can use foundation APIs to go configure the servers, and then we turn those over to the customer, which they can then manage through Prism. And something important to keep in mind here is that this isn't a managed service. This isn't infrastructure as a service. The customer has complete control over the Nutanix platform. So we're turning that over to them. It's connected to their network. They're using their IP addresses, their tools and processes to operate this. So it was really important for the platform we picked to have a really good self-service story for things like lifecycle management. So with one-click upgrade, customers have total control over patches and upgrades. They don't have to call us to do it. They can drive that themselves.
Got it. Got it. Any final words around what do you see of the partnership going forward?
Well, I think this would be a great platform for Xi, so I think we should probably talk about that.
Yeah. We should talk about that separately. Thanks a lot, Jason.
Thanks.
All right, man. So as we look at the full journey now, between obviously from invisible infrastructure to invisible clouds, there is one thing though to take away beyond many updates that we've had so far, right? And the fact is that everything that I've talked about so far is about completing a full-blown true IaaS stack, right? All the way from compute to storage to virtualization to containers to network services and so forth. But every public cloud, a true cloud in that sense, has a full-blown layer of services that sit on top, either for traditional workloads or for new workloads, whether it be machine learning, whether it be big data, you name it, right? And in the enterprise, if you think about it, many of these services are being provisioned or provided through a bunch of our partners, like we have partnerships with Cloudera for big data and so forth. But then based on some customer feedback and a lot of attention from what we've seen in the industry go out, just like AWS and GCP and Azure, it's time for Nutanix to have an opinionated view of the PaaS stack. It's time for us to kind of move up the stack with our own offering that obviously adds value, but provides some of our core competencies in data and takes it to the next level. And it's in that sense that we're actually launching Nutanix Era to simplify one of the hardest problems in enterprise IT. And short of saving you from true Oracle licensing, it solves various other Oracle problems, okay? Which is about truly simplifying databases. Much like what RDS did on AWS, imagine enterprise RDS on demand, where you can provision, lifecycle manage your databases with one click. And to talk about this powerful new functionality, let me invite Bala and John on stage to give you one final demo. Good to see you guys.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, so we got lots of folks here. They're all anxious to get to the next level, so this demo really rock it.
Yep.
Okay. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to start with, say, maybe some database provisioning?
Yeah.
Do you want to set it up? Yeah.
We have one dream, Sunil.
Yeah.
One single dream to pursue after. That is what Nutanix is today for IT ops. We want to recreate that magic for DB ops and get back those weekends and freedom to DBAs.
Got it. Let's start with what? Provisioning?
Yep.
John?
Yeah, we're going to get into provisioning. So provisioning databases inside the enterprise is a significant undertaking. It usually involves a myriad of resources and can take days. It doesn't get any easier after that for the long-term maintenance with things like upgrades and environment refreshes and so on. Bala and team have been working on this challenge for quite a while now. So we've architected Nutanix Era to cater to these enterprise use cases and make it one click, like you said. And Bala and I are so excited to finally show this to the world. We think that's actually one of Nutanix's best-kept secrets.
Got it. All right, man, let's take a look at it.
So we're going to be provisioning a sales database today. It's a 4-step workflow. The first part is choosing our database engine. And since it's our sales database, we want it to be highly available. So we'll do a 2-node rack configuration. From there, it asks us where we want to land this service. We can either land it on an existing service that's already been provisioned, or if we're starting that new, or for whatever reason, we can create a new service for it. The key thing here is we're not asking anybody how to do the work. We're asking what work you want done. And the other key thing here is we've architected this concept called profiles. So you tell us how much resources you need, as well as what network type you want and what software revision you want. This is actually controlled by the DBAs, so DBAs and compute administrators and network administrators, so they can set their standards without having to deviate. So if we go
okay, let's take a look.
To the next piece here, it's going to personalize our database. The key thing here, again, is that we're not asking you how many data files you want or anything in that regard. So we're going to be provisioning this to Nutanix's best practices. And the key thing there is just like these PaaS services, you don't have to read dozens of pages of best practice guides. It just does what's best for the platform.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And so these are a multitude of provisioning steps that normally one would take, I guess, hours, if not days, to provision an Oracle RAC data.
Yeah, across multiple teams, too. So if you think about the life cycle, especially if you have onshore and offshore resources, I mean, this it might even be longer than days.
Got it. Yeah. Got it. Got it. And then there are a few steps here that and will lead into potentially the time machine construct, too.
Yep. Yeah. So since this is a critical database, we want data protection. So we're going to be delivering that through a feature called time machines. We'll leave this at the defaults for now, but the key thing to note here is we've got SLAs that deliver both continuous data protection as well as telescoping checkpoints for historical recovery.
Got it. So that's provisioning. We've kicked off a Oracle, what, 2-node database and so forth?
Yeah, 2-node database. So we've got a handful of tasks that this is going to automate. We'll check back in a few minutes.
Got it. Why don't we talk about the other aspects then, Bala, right? Maybe around one of the things that, and I know many of you guys have seen this, is the fact that if you look at databases, especially Oracle, but in general, even SQL and so forth, is the fact that, look, if you really simplified it to a developer, it should be as simple as I copy my production database and I paste it to create my own dev instance. And whenever I need it, I need to obviously do it the opposite way, right? So that was the goal that we set ahead for us to actually deliver this new PaaS service around Era for our customers.
Yep.
Okay, so you want to talk a little bit more about it?
Sure, Sunil. If you look at most of the data management functionality, they are pretty much like flavors of copy-paste operations on database entities. But the trouble is, the seemingly simple, innocuous operations of our daily lives becomes the most dreaded, complex, long-running, error-prone operations in data center. So we actually plan to tame this complexity and bring consumer-grade simplicity to these operations, also make these clones extremely efficient without compromising the quality of service, right?
Got it.
And the best part is the customers can enjoy these services not only for databases running on Nutanix, but also for databases running on third-party systems.
Got it. So let's take a look at this functionality of, I guess, snapshotting, clone, and recovery, right? That we've now built into the product.
Right. So now, if you see the core feature of this whole product is called something we call as time machine. Time machine lets the database administrators actually capture the database state to the granularity of seconds, and also lets them create clones, refresh them to any point in time, and also recover the databases if the databases are running on the same Nutanix platform.
Got it.
Let's take a look at a demo with the time machine. So here is our customer relationship database management database, which is about 2.3 terabytes. If you see, the time machine has been active about 4 months, and SLA has been set for continuous recovery region of 30 days, and then slowly tapers off 30 days of daily backup and weekly backups, and so on and so forth. On the right-hand side, you will see different colors, right? The green color is pretty much your continuous recovery region, what we call them. That lets you to go back to any point in time to the granularity of second within those 30 days. And then the discrete recovery region lets you go back to any snapshot of the backup that is maintained there, kind of stuff.
Got it.
In a way, you see, this time machine is pretty much like your modern-day car with self-driving ability, right? All you need to do is set the goals, and the time machine will do whatever it is needed to reach up to the goal, kind of stuff.
So why don't we quickly do a snapshot and a...
Yeah, at some of these times, like you need to create a snapshot for ad hoc backup purposes. Time machine has manual controls. All you need to do is give it a snapshot name. And then you have the ability to actually persist this snapshot data into a third-party or object store so that your durability and other global data access requirements are met, kind of stuff. So we kick off a snapshot operation. Let's look at what it is doing. If you see what is snapshot operation that it is going through, there is a first step called quiescing the databases. Basically, we are using application-centric APIs. Here, it's actually RMAN of Oracle. We are using the RMAN of Oracle to quiesce the database and performing application-consistent storage snapshots with Nutanix technology. Basically, we are fusing application-centric and then Nutanix platform and unquiescing it. Just for a data point, if you have to use traditional technology and create a backup for this kind of size, it takes about 4 to 6 hours. Whereas on Nutanix, it's going to be a matter of seconds.
OK.
Yeah? So it almost looks like snapshot is done. You can use it. This is full synthetic backup. You can pretty much use it for database restores kind of stuff. Maybe we'll do a clone demo now and see how it goes.
Yeah, let's go check it out.
So for clone, again, to the simplicity of command C, command V, all you need to do is pick the time of your choice, maybe around 3 o'clock in the morning today.
Yeah, let's go.
Probably. Yeah, good time. 3:02?
Yeah,
okay.
why not?
You select the time, and all you need to do is click on the clone. And most of the inputs that are needed for the clone process will be defaulted intelligently by us, right? And you have to make 2 choices. That is, whether you want this clone to be created with a brand new VM, database server, or you want to place that in your existing server. So we'll go with a brand new server, and then all you need to do is just give the passwords for your new clone database.
And this is an example
and then clone it kind of stuff.
Personalizing the database so that the developer can do that.
Right. So here is the clone kicking in, and what it is trying to do is actually it's creating a database VM, and then registering the database, restoring the snapshot, and then recovering the logs up to 3 o'clock in the morning, like what we just saw that, and then actually giving back the database to the requester. Kind of stuff.
Maybe one final thing, John. Do you want to show us the provision database that we kicked off?
Yeah, looks like it just finished a few seconds ago. So you can see all the tasks that we were talking about here before, from creating the virtual infrastructure and provisioning the database infrastructure and configuring data protection. So I can go access this database now.
Yeah, again, just to highlight this, guys, what we just showed you is an Oracle 2-node instance provisioned live in a few minutes on Nutanix. And this is something that even in a public cloud, when you go to RDS on AWS or anything like that, you still can't provision Oracle RAC, by the way, right? Yeah. But that's what you've seen now, and that's what the power of Nutanix Era is. OK?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right?
Thank you.
One final thing around, obviously, when we're building this, it's built as a PaaS service. It's not meant for just operational benefits. And so one of the core design principles has been around being API first, right?
Yep.
You want to show that a little bit?
Absolutely, Sunil. This whole product is built on API-first architecture, pretty much what you're seeing today, and all the functionality that we will not be able to show today. Everything is built on REST APIs, and you can pretty much integrate with ServiceNow architecture and give you your DevOps experience for your customers. We do have a plan for full-fledged self-service portal eventually, and then make it as a proper service.
Got it.
Yep.
Great job, Bala.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Good stuff, man.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks.
So with Nutanix Era being this one-click provisioning, lifecycle management powered by APIs, I think what you're going to see is the fact that a lot of the products that we've talked about so far, while I've talked about things like COM, FO, AHV functionality that are all been released in 5.5, 5.6, a bunch of the other stuff are also coming shortly, right? So I would strongly encourage you guys to kind of spend some, most of these products that we've talked about, in fact, all of the products that we've talked about are going to be in the breakout sessions. We're going to go deep into them in the demos as well as in the pods. So spend some quality time, not just on the stuff that's been shipping, but also stuff that's coming out. And so one thing to keep in mind, to sort of take away, is that we're doing this all, obviously with freedom as the goal, but from the product side, it has to be driven by choice. Whether the choice is based on platforms, it's based on hypervisors, whether it's based on consumption models, and eventually, even though we're starting with the management plane, eventually we'll go to the data plane of how to actually provide a multi-cloud choice as well, right? And so when we wrap things up, and we look at the 5 freedoms that Ben talked about, don't forget the 6th freedom, especially after 6 to 7 p.m., where the whole goal as a Nutanix family, an extended family, make sure we mix it up, OK? Thank you so much, and we'll see you around.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our morning keynote session. Breakouts will begin in 15 minutes.